Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's reconvened council meeting. Before we start, is that right? Yeah. Before we start, I just have one very short announcement. On Friday, several of us visited new houses for Waverley residents in Chiddingfold and in Farnham. It was just fantastic to see these houses completed. They are designed to be comfortable, practical, and affordable to run. High levels of insulation and renewable energy means lower bills and warm homes. We should all be very proud of this, and we should place on record our thanks to our officers who have contributed in any way to these new houses where our residents can live and thrive. So we come to agenda number 1, apologies for absence. Are there any?
I've received apologies from Councillor Atkins, Councillor Barker-Lomax, Councillor Cavalieri, Councillor Clark, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Hussaini, Councillor Rulleen, Councillor Rubini, Councillor Staunton and Councillor Sullivan. Are there any other apologies? Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. Are there any? No. So agenda item 9, as was the pay policy. Are there any questions on clarity? No. Councillor Follows, would you like to move this, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and good evening, everyone. Pleased to move this motion, and I believe I have a seconder.
Very pleased to second, thank you.
And do you reserve your right to speak?
I do reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As I'm sure you're all aware, having done this for many years at this point, sections 38 to 42 of the Localism Act 2011 require that local authorities produce an annual policy statement covering a number of matters concerning the authority's pay and staff, in particular the approach to the pay of senior management and our lowest employees and the relationship between the two. Before you is the pay policy statement for the financial year 26-27. It's one we've been through many, many times before, and I hope that will be sufficient, but please do shout if not, and I do here so move it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? Councillor Keel, would you like to speak at all?
No, thank you.
So we come to the vote. And the Councillor Follows, did you want to say any right?
Oh, no, I know nothing else, thank you.
So the recommendation is that Council resolves to approve the pay policy statement for financial year 2026-7. When lights show, please vote. That is carried unanimously. Agenda item number 10 is the SIL exceptional circumstances. Are there any questions about clarity? Councillor Goodridge.
Yeah, I have a recollection at the executive working group that we were told that the maximum relief you can get is something like 200 or 250,000. There's nothing in the report that makes that clear. Am I right in that assumption?
Councillor Townsend.
Yes, that is within the policy, so it is subject to the legislation itself. So it hasn't been included, but it's subject to the legislation, so we can't change that.
Are there any other questions? No. Councillor Liz Townsend.
Thank you. I'd like to move this motion, and I believe I have a seconder.
And do you reserve your right? Certainly. Councillor.
I believe that Councillor Murray has got an amendment that he would like to put forward.
Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did send it in earlier, I think, and I spoke with the Joint Assistant Director of Planning, and we amended it slightly. But if you'd like me to read it, or is it on the screen? Sorry. Right, Madam Mayor, would you like me to read it? Is that
I
okay?
think that would be a good idea.
Okay, lovely. Okay, thank you. I've spoken to the Joint Assistant Director of Planning today and amended my original one slightly, and this is the wording we've agreed. So with the input and prior consultation with the ward councillor and the portfolio holder, and that any decisions will be published and reported to the next available planning committee. Can I say why I'd like to do this, or should I leave that till later?
I'm happy to accept that amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Murray, did you have a seconder? Councillor Beaman. So your seconded amendment has been accepted. Yes. So that amendment should be voted on and debated if anybody wants to debate. Councillor Murray.
It's
Well,
been accepted though, Madam Mayor, by the
Well, I suppose I should really say why I'm putting this forward, I imagine, should I? Or will be better, I would imagine. Does it not need to be? I'm fine then.
One moment. One moment.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Townsend has moved an alternative motion. So unless she's now moving the motion that Councillor Murray's proposed, then it should be voted upon.
That's what she said.
Thank you. I accepted Councillor Murray's amendment, and that was the motion, the amended motion that I was then moving, and that was seconded by Councillor Merriweather.
Sorry, but Councillor Merriweather seconded before Councillor Murray made his amendment.
Madam Mayor, may I propose we move to a vote on Councillor Murray's amendment?
So we should vote on the amendment, which has been accepted, but we will vote on the amendment. All in favour, please vote. Or when the lights show, please vote. That has been unanimously accepted. So Councillor Townsend, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to thank officers and the cross-party review and reform SIL working group for their work on this policy and for putting forward this recommendation to adopt the policy. If adopted, this will be available for claims from the 1st of April 2026. Whilst there was no confusion in the cross-party working group about the need for this policy, there appears to have risen subsequently some misunderstanding about what this policy actually covers. This policy does not cover individual householder applications. The SIL regulations make it clear how this policy must be used. The regulations require that such applications for this policy or under this policy can only be made for developments where there is a section 106 in place for the development and it has been demonstrated through a full viability assessment that the SIL charge would render the development unviable. Viability is the only exceptional circumstances that can be considered. The Council must ensure that any grant of exceptional circumstances relief is also requirement, as Councillor Goodridge mentioned, with requirements of the Subsidy Control Act 2022 as amended. Relief must not constitute a notifiable state aid, and that's currently set at £250,000, and there are certain conditions attached to that. The policy sets out the regulatory tests which would need to be met before any claim can be made and what must accompany that claim. I should also stress that a claim for exceptional circumstances relief cannot be made after the development has commenced, but where a chargeable development proceeds in phases, a separate phase can be considered for relief. Relief may be granted for all or part of the liability in relation to a chargeable development. This can mean the whole development, or as I said, part of the scheme where a development proceeds in phases, can be considered. The regulations make it clear that each case will be considered on a case-by-case basis and that the council retains the discretion to make judgments about the viability of the scheme and to determine whether it is considered that exceptional circumstances apply. The number of such developments, whilst difficult to predict in detail, is likely to be very small, as the regulations require that it only apply in truly exceptional circumstances, as I have explained. However, it is important that the council is being seen by the government to remove barriers for chargeable development and using every tool that it can, particularly in the current development market. Having an exceptional circumstances relief policy in place can also strengthen the authority's position during local plan examination. I'm very happy for the ward councillors to be advised and to see sight of the viability statement, and obviously in consultation with myself. And but the decision maker is the joint Assistant Director of Planning. I very much hope that the council will adopt this policy as included in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? Councillor Hyman and Councillor Hess.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Looking at how this will work in practice, I thank Councillor Goodrich for his clarification there. That it is only for small amounts. I understand it doesn't apply if you are going to also request apply for affordable housing relief, so you can't have the two alongside each other. This is one of the issues which we find with planning, where developers are unable to afford believe that their developments can no longer afford to provide the affordable housing and therefore wish to drop it and proceed. And it's one way where the problem of having a very high CIL rate could be helpful, having this, but of course it's all down to the definition of exceptional circumstances, because we could find, as the committee report tells us quite openly, that there could be a raft of such applications, or there might be none. We don't know. We can't foresee that. But at the rate our CIL is, a lot of people might try and take advantage of it. You know, Centrum, for instance, which is one which was recently refused and isn't viable. My concern: planning committee decisions are made on the assumption that infrastructure contributions are going to be forthcoming, although isn't a consideration at the planning committee when the decision is being made. It's made on an assumption that the infrastructure is going to be taken care of and that there's going to be a contribution made towards it. So obviously the planning committee has got quite an interest in making sure that they're not granting consent to things that no longer have any contribution going forward to the towards infrastructure that's necessary to support that development. So remember, oversight is vital, and I thank Councillor George Murray and Councillor Townsend for the amendment to include consultation with independent of the ward members, so that other people are open. But I am concerned. Experience at Guildford in respect of awarding housing repairs contracts and that sort of thing, and with the West Surrey Unitary Authority coming forward, it's absolutely imperative that we have safeguards for constituents against the improper use of this, i.e. allowing it to be used to let a lot of developments through on the basis of we've got a report that says that this isn't viable, and that's the issue with it. at 12.2.4 of our Officer Report, the Subsidy Control Act states quite clearly the requirement for transparency. It must be done transparently, and that's the word. So I would like to, at the end, I don't know whether officers could perhaps give advice whether it's good or not, but at the end of the paragraph of that recommendation 223, just insert, provided that relevant viability assessments are in the public domain, so that we're transparent. We want to ensure, so we are only allowing this to be done effectively if the relevant viability assessments are in the public domain. I don't know how we can say we're being transparent if they're not. You know, I don't know what other members think of that. I haven't looked for a seconder, but I will ask whether I can have a seconder. I've got it written down on a piece of paper here, which you're welcome to have, but it is simply inserting before the full stop, provided that relevant viability assessments are in the public domain. Do I have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, yes, I'll second Councillor Hyman's recommendation if it's acceptable.
Can I just, Madam?
It's that bit, the first bit. It's done.
I'll just pass it.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Follows, what is your point of order?
Unfortunately, I have to contend that the amendment is probably outside of this council's powers, as all such viability assessments would be commercial in confidence and therefore would have to be exempt.
Necessarily in public interest.
I'm given advance notice of this amendment and we do need to just check the position. So if I could perhaps ask you to just take a short adjournment for a couple of minutes, please.
We will adjourn for 5 minutes, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to advise that my ruling is that the amendment is not acceptable in its current form because we cannot commit to putting such viability assessments in the public domain on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hess. Councillor Hess, yep. You're next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's Councillor Hyman referred to affordable housing. What I was going to ask is whether the exceptional circumstances exemption would apply to developments where affordable housing has been removed through a viability report. So that basically they get, a developer would get the benefit of not having to put in affordable housing and also the reduction in the CIL charge.
Thank you. This is a time for debate, not questions, so I expect that it will be raised in a moment. I'm going to go to Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree in principle that Waverley should have an exceptional circumstances relief policy and that we should be doing everything possible to bring forward significant sites. However, I don't think this policy will make any meaningful difference to the challenges our borough faces unlocking development at the moment. Relief only applies in very limited situations. It's only up to 250k as stated, and only after her developer has already purchased the site, paid for a viability assessment, paid again for the council's own viability advisor, and all with no guarantee whatsoever that relief will be granted. In the real world, that is not an attractive or viable route for unlocking development, so its impact will be extremely limited. Nowhere is this clearer than the Woolmead site in Farnham. We have a prime 2-acre town centre site that has sat empty for almost 8 years. Developers are telling us plainly that with Sill's rate of over £550 per square metre, potentially a bill of more than 5 million, the scheme is not viable. What no developer will do is spend millions acquiring a site only to gamble on Sill relief afterwards with uncertain outcomes and significant upfront risk. It's just not how the market works. An exceptional circumstances policy is only potentially useful where a purchaser takes a subject to planning permission route, because that allows viability, including what level of Sill the scheme can realistically support, to be tested before being locked into buying the land. There will always be a push and a pull between land value and Sill throughout this policy, but at least it does create a structure for that dialogue to happen. So while this policy may assist the occasional case, it will only help a couple, it will not unlock other stalled regeneration sites. The real issue is Waverley's Sill charging rate, one of the highest in the country outside London, and it's making regeneration unviable. When this rate was set in 2018, the evidence supported it and the planning inspector agreed. But market conditions have changed significantly. The rate must move if we want developments to be viable and delivered. If the charging rate is not reviewed urgently, the alternative is stagnation, empty sites and no new homes. We repeat our request to the executive to review the Sill charging rate now. Don't wait for 3 years' time alongside the next local plan. I know it's not a straightforward process and it requires evidence, but I strongly believe it's necessary. Sill is meant to support development and not block it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Follows and Councillor Coburn.
So first of all, I'm going to be supporting this motion because it is within the very limited confines of what the Sill regulations allow, the best that we can do. There are a number of issues I have with some of the things that Councillor Austin has said, though. I do think we operate in a market that is heavily weighted towards the needs of developers. We have this continuous tension between infrastructure and affordable housing, which I broadly find offensive. And we have this notion that we all need to bend over backwards, particularly every part of the state, whether it be local or national government, to offset and manage the risk of private developers at every part of your business decisions. Developers seem to be one of the few markets in the country who seem to be able to offset all of their business risk onto the state. And the parts of the state that pay for that are affordable and social housing and infrastructure provision. I suspect the Sill charging sheet is one component of the economics of house building, but I would certainly never suggest it was the whole factor within somewhere like Waverley. But back to the actual subject of this motion. It will allow us to, within the maximum limit of the Sill regulations, give some relief in exceptional circumstances. I imagine the Woolmead is such a site where such exceptional circumstances is likely to exist, which of course will have to be spoken through. I'm also pleased that we have accepted the amendment in terms of the briefing of ward members. I think that's an entirely reasonable thing to do, but of course we'll just add the note, and I'm sure others will understand this. These are done as viability assessments done through a process by the head of planning. It's good that ward members will be updated and the planning committees will be updated, but I think it's just worth managing expectations that such consultation doesn't constitute a veto for a ward member. I don't think anybody's expecting that it is, but I think it prudent of me just to outline how I interpreted that amendment, and I'm sure the head of planning interpreted that amendment as well. seeing nodding across the chamber, so excellent. But otherwise, I would ask that we support this as the most we can do. And I am quite confident the executive will explore all avenues to try and encourage good development within Waverley that also brings infrastructure and brings not just 5-bedroom estates up in the hills, but genuinely affordable and sustainable housing where it's needed right across Waverley. And as the Mayor made clear in her announcement, I think we visited 2 sites that constituted 50 properties on Friday, some in Farnham and some in Chiddingfold. They were procured through a variety of different means. We have a very significant housing register, as you know. Some we bought, some we built, some we've acquired separately through 106 and various other arrangements. We are open to everything, as I'm sure you're going to hear from me again in the 69 High Street debate. We need to use all the levers we've got. This is another lever, so we should do it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn, followed by Councillor Goodrich.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have neither the qualifications or the experience in commercial property that my colleague on my right has. I can't speak with her professionalism and her depth of knowledge, but I can speak with years of experience of sitting on the planning committee, and also the fact that over the 20-odd years or whatever that I have been involved in Farnham actively, then I have spoken to all sorts of people, as you would have expected of a decent councillor. And I raise this because of the Woolmead, because that site we had so much hope for when it was given permission, and we wanted it to succeed. And it's broken my heart to see all the rubbish that's been in the Herald. What we're going to do, how we're going to do it. Oh, it's easy. We just put a carousel up here and a bit of green here. It'll be, you know, a centerpiece for Farnham. I'm sorry, it's not the way the market works. And we have been told for years that this site is not viable. We have been told by developers, we've been told by commercial agents, we've been told by professionals in the field that this site simply will not work. And sadly, what's on offer tonight, which I will support because it's better than nothing, but it is not going to unlock a site as difficult as the Woolmead. We can be more imaginative. We should be more imaginative than this. And then we could perhaps unlock a site like this. And I think we should listen very carefully to what Councillor Austin was saying, because if we can put in something that actually unlocks the site, stops the developers having to put in all the money with still so much uncertainty, we are not going to unlock that Woolmead site. We've also got difficulties on other sites in the town. Now, again, Councillor Austin is quite right. In 2018, you could build any rubbish and somebody would queue up to buy it in Farnham. I mean, everything was flying off the shelves. Everything was just ready for development and people were buying houses. We're in a different situation now, a very different situation. And yes, reluctantly, I will support this, and not reluctantly at all, but I just feel it is not the answer, and certainly the really tricky sites will not be unlocked by this. It's too little. And I think we really should look into how creative we can be. I am not anti-development. I'm not pro-development. I don't have this bitterness of some people in this council chamber towards developers. But if developer after developer and agent after agent, and every professional is telling us that site is non-viable. It is not viable as it stands. Nobody can afford to buy it and do what they need to do it to get the planning permission. Then we are never going to unlock it without something a bit more imaginative. So I think we should certainly support this, but go back, make sure that the executive really does look at something more creative that will unlock these really tricky sites. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goodrich.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm in favour of this policy, but it's on the basis that something's better than nothing. I think in reality, when you look at all the conditions and the requirements of statute, and regulations that are set out on page 273 of our papers, which includes having a 106 agreement in place as well. The likelihood, I think, of any sites that I'm aware of, and I know I had a planning in our working group. She cited 2 sites. I think one of them was Woolmead, and I don't think that is going to help Woolmead either because of the amount of money involved, which is a drop in the ocean so far as the problems we've got on viability of Woolmead. And there was another site in my patch, which I think are sorting out a different solution to get round it. So I think the likelihood of this policy ever applying to Waverley in practice is pretty near zero. But at least something's better than nothing. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Merriweather, do you wish to speak now?
Yes, thank you. Just for the avoidance of doubt, I come from the private sector and I believe in free and fair markets as distinct from free-for-alls and feral ones. SIL is meant to support the provision of infrastructure. And like all affordable housing, and indeed SANG, it embodied the principles that developers should pay their fair share of the on-costs of their projects. But I think it's no secret that I'm not persuaded that SIL is the best mechanism for funding desperately needed infrastructure as effectively or efficiently as it could be. But in that regard, I'll just go off and note that the recommendation for the allocation of £14 million, the strategic SIL published yesterday in next week's executive agenda pack, is still very good news indeed for our residents who rely on the organisations, including at last the NHS, that actually bid for the money. But I also have concerns over the principles and use of viability assessments, which can distort the private markets by de-risking them and possibly may even inadvertently actually cause land prices to go up. In the real world, perhaps like the Woolmead, we've seen the pressures from land price inflation just as much as development cost inflation, and both of them being already taken out on the delivery of much needed affordable housing. But we have onerous housing targets, and we must use, however reluctantly, the few tools provided to us within the regulations to encourage delivery, even if they seem imperfect, if not unfair. But these factors were discussed by the members of the cross-party SIL reform group when we agreed that on balance, this policy should be recommended. So I'm happy to second the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Merriweather. You know, this isn't the best way of funding infrastructure, but it's, you know, the way that this council chose back in 2018 to fund infrastructure. And at that time, the Conservatives did fight for a very high level of SIL. It is the SIL is being reviewed, as you know, in line with the local plan. There is no point in producing a spatial strategy and the need for infrastructure in an updated infrastructure delivery programme, only to find that we've set SIL at a level which cannot actually deliver that infrastructure. So that will be putting the cart before the horse. We have to go along with the way things are. We can't just review SIL without the evidence, and the evidence will be provided with the local plan. Unfortunately, I do think, Councillor Hyman and Councillor Hess, that yes, developers can reduce down the amount of affordable housing and yes, perhaps still apply for the exceptional circumstances relief. However, I will get back to you on that. I'll double check with Claire on that one, but I do feel that that probably is the case. Remember that the viability assessments, yes, not perfect, but they are carried out by an independent person. They're independently assessed. and that is the the basis on what the decision is made. You can't bring in other variables. It's set down within the legislation. We're all sat around here for months now talking about this legislation. Again, we hear it from Councillor Austin about the legislation. Doesn't like it. At the end of the day, the Conservatives were in power for 14 years in government. They could have changed this legislation. They could have adapted it. We have begged for either a hammer or an incentive to try and get developers to bring forward sites. And the Warmead site is such a site. It's owned by Homes England. They are the ones that are meant to be brought in the event of market failure, and that site is still not being brought forward. If that wasn't market failure and a failure of policy, then I don't know what is. We need to see new homes being provided. We have as you know, housing numbers that are, over doubled, and we need to have some way of bringing these sites forward, but we don't have that. And we have begged successive government to change the way that housing allocations are made and targets are made. No phasing, one night you're one thing, the next day your figures doubled. It is a completely ridiculous thing. And whilst we were delivering houses at a reasonable level, even with this SIL number, we were delivering quite reasonable level of housing. It has fallen off the cliff, partly because of Brexit, partly because of inflation, and partly because of the war in Ukraine. We've got very many circumstances which has made the market slump slightly. And in that slump market, would you think that the government might think, OK, we'll have a flexibility within our policy? No, you still get your 1,440 houses. You've got to deliver even when developers aren't building. It is a ridiculous set of circumstances to be in. We keep asking the government to change. But to be honest, Matthew Pennycook replied to a question in the House of Commons, and I do not think that he actually understands what we are having to go through on the ground here. And I think, they need to listen more. It is a slight tool that we have. Is it enough? No. But as the SIL cross-party working group said, it is something, it's better than nothing. So I would recommend that we adopt the policy and move forward, but that we still pressure government to try and change this ridiculous housing numbers and the way that we are now delivering infrastructure. Thank you.
On the dot, thank you. So we come now to vote on the motion as amended. When lights show, please vote. That is carried unanimously. So we come to agenda item number 11, which is the neighbourhood SIL cap. Are there any questions on clarity? No. Councillor Liz Townsend, would you like to propose?
I believe that's Mark Merriweather.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Councillor Merriweather?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose. I think I have a second or two, but before I do that, having learned from the last one, I would like to just record that we have an adjustment to this, an alteration. Thank you, to the recommendation, and that is to insert the words ward councillor and in the second sentence before the portfolio holder, where we talk about the delegated authority being to the Joint Assistant Director of Planning in consultation with the ward councillor and the portfolio holder, if that's okay. No? Apparently it's not okay anymore.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, we hadn't been given advance notice of this alteration. Could you just read out again what the alteration is, please?
Oh, that's very odd. Okay, so in the recommendations, we have the second paragraph, delegate authority to the Joint Assistant Director for Planning. Yep. in consultation with the ward councillor and the portfolio holder for finance assets and property. Yes. And I am sorry, I thought this was all sorted.
We weren't notified of that alteration in advance, councillor Merriweather. Can I just check, is your seconder content with that alteration, and is the consent of the council to alter it, please?
I'm happy to agree that alteration.
Is everybody happy with
Can't
that?
speak on-
Agreed.
Agreed?
So councillor Merriweather.
Great.
Happy to second.
Good, that's that. All right, well, hopefully this is not controversial. So speaking just a moment ago of possibly imperfect, if not unfair regulations, the purpose of this report is to highlight and address as best we can an issue relating to the implications of the neighbourhood sill cap. The report describes how the cap is outside of our control and how we've been struck by how it adversely affected one of our parishes in particular, and that's Alfold. In the report, we identify a mechanism that we hope will go some way to mitigating that impact, not only for Alfold, but for any other neighbourhoods that may be affected with our support. I can confirm that we are content with the addition of the phrase, the ward councillor, which is why the alteration has been made. And otherwise, we believe the proposal has the support of Alfold Parish Council. And for completeness, I can confirm its endorsement also by the cross-party strategic cell spending EWG during our recent deliberation. So with that, I'm just going to leave the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend, have you reserved your right to speak?
Yes, I'd like to reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you. Sorry, just 1 minute. My screen's not working. Oh, there we are. So this policy goes some way towards correcting the long-standing unfairness in one of the many unfair ways the SIL regulations operate, an unfairness felt most acutely at the moment in Alfold. Under the current regulations, neighbourhood SIL is calculated only on the basis of completed homes. It does not take account of the very large number of homes that have planning permission but have not yet been built. In villages such as Alfold, the report acknowledges this creates a serious injustice. A significant number of the major planning applications that will shape the village for decades were submitted before the Alfold Parish neighbourhood plan was put in place. Those applications will bring hundreds of new homes, yet none of them count towards the neighbourhood SIL allocation, even though the pressure on local infrastructure will be immense. Because of this, funding that should rightly flow to the community as neighbourhood SIL has to be treated instead as strategic SIL, which we all know is more restrictive. This leads to the second major frustration, that strategic SIL cannot be used for the types of infrastructure Alfold actually urgently needs. The regulations prevent it being spent on water, wastewater infrastructure and utilities upgrades, or all the very network improvements required to support the level of development already approved. In short, the problems Alfold is actually facing are precisely the areas where strategic SIL cannot be used. I'm continuing to work with Councillor Kevin Denis and Sir Jeremy Hunt to press for these upgrades. That's ongoing. It does not remove the immediate frustration felt by residents who see their village expanding rapidly with no matching investment in infrastructure they rely on daily. I think the idea of a SIL board is a good one, but if we want decisions to be fair and credible, the SIL board set up to oversee this work must be cross-party, rooted in local knowledge and transparent in how those decisions are made. And crucially, it must include the ward councillors as the elected members who understand the day-to-day realities. They are the best ones for dealing with the consequences. They know about these planning decisions and they're best placed to inform any decisions about how SIL should be applied. The same applies, of course, to parish councils, who I would hope would be consulted at every step of the way. So I would like to propose an amendment to strengthen it by ensuring the board is cross-party and ensuring ward councillors are included as full members of that SIL board. That's the only way that the decisions genuinely will reflect the needs of the community most affected. I have submitted the wording of the amendment and had it discussed with the head of planning. I'd be really grateful if you could put it up on the screen. Thank you.
And do you have a seconder?
I do. Councillor Kevin Denis. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, can I just ask Councillor Austin, bearing in mind that Councillor Merriweather altered his motion to include ward councillors when he first moved it, are you hoping to remove your wording about ward councillors and just retain the wording about cross-party?
Just, I think if we could just add in the cross-party bit, I think that's the relevant bit remaining. Thank you. Also, just to confirm, mine was in 2.2 rather than 2.1, which I believe Councillor Merriweather's was in. Are they both in 2.2? Okay.
Councillor Merriweather, could I ask you to confirm? I think you said it was in 2.2. You altered.
Well, I may have said 2.1. I can't remember which one I said, but it's.
So what was your alteration? If you could just clarify, please.
There are two that start delegate authority in 2.1 and 2.2.
Which it was the one that the council resolves to, not the one that the executive
Yeah,
resolves
so
to.
council's only got authority to amend 2.2 because the exec said 2.1 previously.
So it's 2.2
Yes.
that's been amended.
Yeah.
Councillor
Sorry, it did
Austin.
say
Thank
2.1
you.
earlier, so I was confused. Thank
Okay,
you.
I apologise.
No, you were right. You were right.
Okay.
Council doesn't have authority to amend.
Councillor Denis, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak?
I'll reserve my right, please.
Okay, so we're now debating that amendment. Councillor Follows.
The administration is happy to accept the wording of that information, though I would suggest that it's strongly suggested by the document that that is the intention, and we would certainly never do anything like this without proper consultation with the towns and parishes. Practically every member of this executive is a town or parish councillor, and we understand as well as anybody possibly could how important it is to consult with towns and parishes. So my hope is that we can curtail this from a long-winded and acrimonious discussion to the administration are happy to accept this amendment.
Through you, Madam Mayor, can we please clarify, is this an amendment that would need to be debated and Councillor Austin would have a right of reply and then it would be voted on? Or Councillor Follows, are you suggesting that the proposer of the original motion wishes to alter it again to include Councillor Austin's suggested change? If so, Councillor Merriweather would need to confirm that he's altering his motion again and that the seconder is happy and that the council consents. Thank you.
To comply with the constitution, I am quite happy to ask Councillor Merriweather if that is the case, though my understanding would be that the proposer of the amendment would need to withdraw it. If that's not the case, if that's quite the case, then in which case, assuming Councillor Merriweather is indeed happy to alter as per that text, then yes, happy to agree with that.
Well, I happen to agree with Councillor Follows. I think it's fairly self-evident in the policy, but for the avoidance of doubt, throw it in. Yeah.
Thank you. So Councillor Merriweather has altered the motion again to include the words cross-party. Could the seconder confirm that they are happy with that?
I am happy with that, and it would have been done anyway through the terms of reference.
Thank
This is
you.
ridiculous.
Is council consenting to the alteration, please?
Thank you. So I'm going back to my list of speakers. Councillor Murray.
Thank you. I hope this is not about semantics. So I know it's very confusing. Even I know. They were. I thought they were. Both of them were very straightforward. Anyway, so as I understand it, where there is no neighbourhood plan in place, the 10% neighbourhood SIL portion lost and is retained by the Borough Council or the future West Surrey Council, and currently it's spent across the borough on strategic infrastructure. So this proposal intends to ring-fence this sum within the borough's strategic SIL fund to be spent only within the parish. I'm correct, yeah. And it's time limited for 3 years, I remember rightly. So the borough will ask the parish to bid for it, and they will set up a board to decide if and how that is spent. And then we've talked about who the makeup of the board and who's going to be on it and how it's all going to be made. So we've talked about that. So anyway, I have said this before, Executive, but I hesitate to put it this way, but it rather feels like that receiving your birthday money from your grandmother, only for your parents to take it away, and they'll say, we'll hold on to it until you can spend it on something sensible. And understandably, nobody, even in my personal experience, is anything to go by, particularly likes this arrangement. But anyway, but the specific challenge in Oldfold, and Councillor Austin has indicated this, is that as anybody who watched the last week's planning committee will know, is that sewage infrastructure remains the #1 issue there. And the proposal may help fund an infant school or perhaps a village store. And those would be welcome improvements. However, it does nothing to address the sewage problem. And realistically, it never will, because SIL funding cannot be used for wastewater infrastructure. So unless that fundamental blockage, and you'll excuse my, they can put it that way, is resolved, this policy will not tackle the issue residents are most concerned about. That said, I support the proposal because it does bring extra funding into Oldfold and other parishes who apply for it. And they'll genuinely need that investment. So I am not against it whatsoever. And I'm delighted that ward members and parish will all be instructed. But there is one remaining concern. It's whether this arrangement might unintentionally discourage smaller parishes from actually producing neighbourhood plans, because if they don't do it, they will know that they're going to receive the extra funding regardless. So I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but it may be some unintended consequences here, and I think we should keep that under review. But I actually 100% support it, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Follows.
And first of all, I think there is quite a lot of experience in neighbourhood plan construction within the room, and I am very confident that it would not put off a town or parish. I will reply to you in the same way I did reply to you at Executive, which is I was in that lovely position where my Christmas money from my nan was kept, because I would probably spend it on sweets instead of spending it on something useful. And not that I think that Oldfold would go and spend it on sweets. But ultimately, this has to be done in this way because of the way the regulations are constructed. So I think I think Oldfold understands this is obviously not something that has been written without having any discussion with them. They know what this is about. We know what this is about. And I think they support what we're doing here. I do want to just go back to some of the comments about water, though. I mean, I remember standing in a room after the big water outage in Shalford that stopped all the water in most of GU7 and GU8 for a good portion of about 8 weeks. So in Bramley, particularly by the end of it, was one of the most hit. And I asked Jeremy Hunt about this very thing. I made it very clear. We'd love to spend SIL on water infrastructure, but as long as they're a private company, it means we can't. Jeremy Hunt, are you in favour of continuing to have a privatised water industry that continues to fail at every single level, every single place, and allows for the exfiltration of billions and billions of pounds of public money to private individuals in the process? And he was quite clear he still supports a privatised water industry. So I'm sure at some point, Councillor Austin, you'll state whether you are in favour of continuing with the water industry as it presently stands. But as thankfully this is only about SIL today, I hope we can move to vote on this item, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I have you down, Councillor Denis, but I'm not sure if you would like to speak.
If I may, thank you. So when we looked at the implications of overdevelopment and development with infrastructure, and when the SIL policy was implemented, nobody expected the large number of houses being built in Oldfold. And a lot of these were given permissions on the back of Dunsfold Park and infrastructure that they were going to provide, which has never materialised. And there are a few people in this chamber who were present in the planning meeting for the recent 70 houses in Oldfold. And I think I detailed the horrors currently facing residents. So I'll repeat them just because some were not there. Sewage entering properties, unable to flush toilets, and raw sewage covering gardens, preventing children and animals to be out of the house. What an awful situation to be in. So for a month, we've had 24/7 tankers pumping sewage, up to 4 a day. So many, they've actually had to block the road to put all the tankers. And we've had confirmation that there's going to be a further permit, probably to at least the 16th of March. So you can imagine with those great big tankers, the noise of the pumping it out, all the lights are on all night because they have to by law, and people have to live there. So we have a village swimming in sewage. But make things even worse, Dunsfold pumping station has broken as well. And there's issues now in Loxwood where some of the sewage from Allfold gets pumped into Loxwood. So I think that the report, option 2, is a fair and allocates money to villages such as Allfold and possibly Dunsfold. I was going to talk about the pocket money story as well, but someone beat me to that. But all I would say is I would like as much...
Councillor Denis, I just wonder if you could address your comments to this agenda item.
Yeah, I think I am, as much as Councillor Follis was talking about Jeremy Hunt going for privatisation. So this is more relevant to infrastructure in the village, which Seal's about. So this is a welcome step in the right direction, but I would ask for as much flexibility as possible. I am delighted that the ward member has been included, which is good, but we do need to actually involve the parish as well, and I know it says we will do. But I'm also grateful to Marissa Nash and Claire Upton-Brown for this report. I know they've worked for a considerable time with Allfold Parish Council looking at these issues, and I'd like to thank Claire for that, but also the Parish Council for continuing that conversation. So thank you, Claire. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Busby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we know all too well, SIL regulations are set nationally, and as we've seen in lots of other areas, the capital neighbourhood SIL does not always operate in practice as perhaps originally intended. This proposal does what it can do. It does not seek to override the regulations as they stand, but instead it does provide a clear, transparent and innovative mechanism to try to ensure that infrastructure funding is directed more appropriately to small rural communities affected by particularly rapid growth, such as Allfold. It doesn't solve all the problems in Allfold by any means, sadly, but potentially other areas that experience something similar. But it is a practical solution to an inherent rigidity in the SIL system. It does support greater fairness and clarity in how infrastructure funding is managed across the borough. So I am very pleased to see it come forward and to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Townsend, you would like to speak now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm very pleased to see this coming forward for Allfold. You know, we have been talking to Allfold Parish Council, as been mentioned, for some time now, and to redress the amount of SIL that the Allfold was due. And of course, Allfold Parish Council will be involved in the allocation of this strategic SIL. Claire has been talking to them for quite some time, and they understand exactly how this is going to work. I would say that, you know, I have to, at the risk of incurring the wrath of the monitoring officer, I have to say that, you know, the SIL cannot actually fund water and sewage infrastructure. And I've been dealing with this for over 10 years. I know I keep saying that. I took the unprecedented step to speak at that planning application on those 70 houses in Allfold, because for 10 years, Allfold has had sewage issues for 10 years, plus probably 12 years now. And this was predictable. I begged the administration here to do a full water cycle study with regards to the last local plan. No, we got a high-level little study done. I begged Andrea Ledson, Kit Malthouse, Anne Milton, Angela Richardson. I begged them to actually address, I am talking about infrastructure. I begged them to address this issue. And what happened, the water companies were heavily deregulated. And what happened was that water companies were allowed to build up unprecedented levels of debt and also to use our rivers as open sewers. You've only got to look at Dirty Business from Channel 4 if you don't believe what I'm saying, and that is a true reflection. So
Point of
this will
order, Madam
provide
Mayor.
a significant
One
uplift to
one
Sill
moment,
for
Councillor
Orfold
Townsend.
Council.
There are a couple of interruptions. There's one over there and Councillor Austin.
Thank you. I can't point to the exact bit of the Constitution, but this is straying. As you said previously, we should be staying on topic.
Yes.
And
do you have a point of order? Because
so that
I
is my
realise
point
that
of order.
too. I realise that too, but I allowed Councillor Denis. I'm going to allow Councillor Townsend.
So this will provide a significant uplift in the Sill amount to the parish council. It won't encourage other councils to do it because if they've got a neighbourhood plan, they get 25% of neighbourhood Sill uncapped. This is not. This is for strategic Sill that they have to put forward. It will be put forward projects that Orfold want to see. Other infrastructure providers will also be able to bid with the board, with the input of the ward councillors. Of course, you are going to include that. And this will hopefully deliver some of the projects that Orfold needs. But is it a panacea? Absolutely not. And I think that this again addresses and highlights the inadequacy of the infrastructure that's being provided alongside development. And I think everybody in this room recognises that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple of members at the back. Are you in the room or are you out of the room? Because that's right. You are not allowed to vote. And also, there's quite a lot of conversation amongst members when there are speakers. I'm not going to name the two repeat offenders, but I will next time. Could it be, please, absolutely a priority that you do not speak when a speaker is speaking? Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am very pleased that this administration has taken the initiative to proactively engage in this problem. And I'm very pleased that we've done it on behalf of Orfold. The regulations are, how can I put this? The regulations aren't helpful. And I think that, it's a credit to us that we are finding a way through them to do what the regulations will allow us to do within the tighter constraints for strategic Sill than for neighbourhood Sill. And I'm very pleased that Councillor Denis, thank you, acknowledged that we've involved the parish right from the very get-go on this. I am not going to talk about water because Sill is not allowed to be spent on the privatised utilities. But I would like to point out that anybody can engage with us and the parish council. It doesn't have to be spent for or by the parish council. It is like any other Sill, strategic Sill, available to anybody with a bid that comes through. Although I'm not going to talk about water, I am going to just talk about infrastructure generally. Because there's one statistic that's out there that explains why Sill or Section 106, whatever particular mechanism you want, is so important, not just for new growth, but to support growth that's already happened. In another life, I teach and mentor regularly at one of the universities in London, the postgraduate students there. And I have cause to quote to them statistics that come out from what is now grandly called UK Capital. It used to be the British Venture Capital Association, who track private equity, private credit investment across the UK. And in 2024, the private capital investment in infrastructure was the lowest of all of the sectors. It was lower than agriculture. It was lower than chemicals and materials. The number of companies was less, that was 0.1% doing this activity. We have to do it because apparently nobody else will. And that's how I'm going to leave this one. Thank you.
Thank you. So you have the recommendation as amended. When lights show, please vote. That is carried unanimously. We come to agenda item number 12, Cranley Leisure Centre. Are there any questions on clarity? No. Councillor Liz Townsend, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And do you have a seconder? Thank you. And do you reserve your right? Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report provides an updated position on the Cranley Leisure Centre project and seeks approval for a supplementary estimate of approximately 4.86 million to progress with option 1, which was recommended by the executive and in line with the revised business plan. This will be funded through 2.65 million of secured SIL funding, not included in the original October 2023 budget, and 2.2 million of internal borrowing. Following an internal audit of our Section 106 agreements and in light of slower than anticipated build-out rates, we have prudently reduced projected Section 106 income by 1.4 million. This doesn't alter the overall budget, but we have updated the viability appraisal with total borrowing at 14.8 million and an extended payback period from 50 to 52 years, still within the lifetime of the asset. As I said, option 1 was recommended by the executive. This is the passive house scheme with inclusive design and the agreed facility mix. This will generate £450,000 per annum in management fee income, turning the current 26,000 annual deficit into a positive revenue generating asset. Since approval in October 2023, further design development, market testing and an independent review of the cost plan has taken place. Members won't be surprised that the primary driver of the increased budget is construction inflation, with significant rises in materials and sustained labour pressures. It is therefore no longer possible to deliver the scheme within the original 31 million budget. And as we know from today, inflation is on the rise again. Any delay to this project could be its death knell. As mentioned, the 2.65 million SIL funding is already secured. The revised budget also includes a prudent 12% contingency, reflecting ongoing market volatility. Further value engineering will take place within the contractor during the next stage. Members will recall concerns about parking during construction. The tender required contractors to retain as much village centre parking as possible, and this has added a further £358,000 and extended the programme by 9 weeks, but it directly addresses residents' and businesses' concerns, and officers will continue to explore further mitigation. Turning to Passive House, this is not a gold-plated addition, but a recognised performance standard that guarantees energy outcomes using conventional materials and proven methods. Modelling shows energy use around 60% lower than a standard leisure centre, and that's quite a conservative estimate, delivering approximately £125,000 per year in guaranteed energy savings from year 2 onwards, amounting to millions over the building's life. It also extends the asset's lifespan with performance designed to last into the 2080s, and that's been verified by energy consultants Gale and Snowden. With energy costs once again rising sharply in recent days, the financial case for adopting passive house standards across all development that the council carries out has become even more compelling. In an environment of volatile and unpredicted energy markets, it is neither prudent nor responsible to leave the council exposed to escalating and unknown future energy bills. Appendix 1 has been published and shows the 4 options that were considered by the executive, and removing Passive House under option 2 would only have caused delay, redesign costs, put the project at risk, removed those guaranteed energy savings and extended the payback period beyond the asset's lifetime. Officers have also submitted a bid for additional SIL funding and continue to explore external funding opportunities, which, if successful, would further reduce borrowing and shorten the payback period. In summary, this delivers a financially viable, environmentally responsible leisure centre that supports our climate commitments, reduces operating costs and transforms a deficit facility into a positive revenue generator at a time when many councils are being forced to close their leisure centres. So I do hope that this will be supported by council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we're looking at a 1960s building that is steadily bleeding cash. Alongside that, we have a clear plan to replace it with a super efficient building designed to remain viable into the 2080s. Now, firstly, I'm sure there are lessons which you've looked at to be learned from Spelthorne's Passive House Standard Eclipse Leisure Centre that was opened in Staines in October 2024. And the cost of this leisure centre increased 45% to 43.5 million by the end of its progress. But yes, the upfront cost is high, at an eye-watering for this one of 36 million. But the running costs are dramatically lower. Over its lifetime, the building doesn't just break even, it performs better financially year after year. So the core reality we need to focus on is the running costs. It shows that the cost of not looking ahead or planning ahead is around £230 per square metre every single year for 60 years. That's £29 versus the current cost of £259 per square metre every year. Now, that is not ideology, that's arithmetic. The only thing we don't know is what the running costs would be for a non-passive house new build. Would this be anywhere near 29? We don't know that figure. But for decades, the dominant question in projects like this, it was simple. How much does it cost to build? But we are now in a different era. Operational costs, energy, maintenance, resilience is no longer secondary. It is the dominant factor for leisure centres especially. So if we choose the cheapest option today, we are not saving money. We are locking this council or any future authority into a high energy bills and higher risk for the next 50 years. This is not prudence, that is postponing the bill and handing it to the next generation. The report calls this future proofing. I would argue it is something even more basic. It's reality proofing. It recognises that cheap can become extremely expensive if you look far enough ahead. And in this case, spending more upfront saves an extraordinary amount over the life of this building. It also delivers a facility that dramatically reduces emissions and does not contribute to the climate crisis. Now, that combination, financial responsibility and environmental responsibility, is real value. And it will serve the hundreds and thousands of future residents of Cranley and beyond for many, many years. So this report is a case study in holding your nerve and trusting long-term evidence over short-term discomfort. And I want to leave you with one final thought, if I could. This building is designed to last to the 2080s, roughly 60 years from now. Now, 60 years ago, the world looked completely different. We landed on the moon. It was the summer of love, and energy was cheap. Climate change was barely discussed, if ever. And none of today's pressures were on the table. So when we invest in public infrastructure today, we need to ask ourselves, are we building for the budget constraints of 2026? or for the climate and cost realities of 2080. So, Madam Mayor, on balance, I support recommendation option 1.
Thank you. Councillor Austin and Councillor Hyman and Councillor Follows. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 3 of 4 of my children attend Cranley Swim Club. So I spend a great deal of time there. And I can tell you more than anybody, I think, possibly in this room, I appreciate that Cranley needs a new leisure centre. But what concerns me is that the financial position here gets more and more precarious as this project progresses. And the numbers, they may yet rise even further. That's my concern. This came for decision twice in as many months, to scrutiny and then to the executive, because £1.435 million in a previously assumed Section 106 income has been removed. Waverley's executive only recently realised the figures needed updating following Dunsfold Park's removal, primarily as deliverable. Nearly 18 months ago that happened. The result is to push the leisure centre borrowing even higher and to extend the £36 million payback to an extraordinary 52 years. It's worth noting that these nearly 5 million increases are above inflation increases already built in, and some of them relate to costs specifically because of unknowns being discovered along the way because of Passive House. I fear the total bill will rise further because of this uncertainty. Lots of people who live in Cranley, indeed, have said to me, why do we have an executive who, when faced with cost increases, rather than seek to scale to budget, the budget just goes up and up? I'm concerned because the assumed lifespan of the scheme has at the same time been conveniently stretched from 50 to 55 years. Just at the precise moment, the payback period extended beyond 50 years. For me, that's caused serious consternation, and it's concerning. It's concerning me. Full council is being asked to approve this £36 million commitment, but as I've set out in my note to all councillors as ONS chair, we maintain members have just not been provided anywhere near enough information required to justify that decision. Councillors have repeatedly requested proper financial detail, not just a one-page options analysis with nice red, green and blue. We wanted a full comparative options analysis, cash flows, benchmarking, robust modelling of alternatives, including the low carbon, non-passive house option. Instead, we were referred to those 3 sides of A4, some historic reports, and given one-line answers to what I believe were very serious questions. On a project of this scale and cost to taxpayers, I find it simply wrong. The executive should simply brush legitimate scrutiny to one side in this way. I just don't feel I can vote for this, as I don't feel I have the data or justification in the information provided to me to date to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hyman.
Thank you. Well, I've got, Madam Mayor, I've got a lot of sympathy and have a lot of agreement with what Councillor Austin says. I don't think that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee has been fully appraised of this, all of the information that you need to make on this decision. But I've looked at it myself in considerable depth because we weren't getting the information that I wanted. And I've looked through all of the existing leisure centres that there are, the Passive House, how it's been progressing, and 1% of homes now are Passive House or whatever. Well, that's not exactly something to shout about. But the history of Passive House leisure centres, the first one was it cost just £11 million because it was a retrofit in Lunen, which is only about 20 miles from where I used to live in Germany, North Rhine-Westphalia. But it wasn't there when I was there. That used the existing heating system, so it was cheap. There's a second one was opened the same year, Bamberg in Bavaria, South Germany, 2011, cost 27 million. A long time ago, of course, prices have gone up. Since a bit of a gap, and then we came to England, St Sidwell's Point in Exeter, A lot of money been spent, £44 million plus, reportedly opened in 2022. Solar panels being added later. I think they've just been added. It's energy saving, interesting. I mean, it assumes 60% energy saving, so I don't go with the figures that Councillor Murray has been given and has come from. I know I'm very sceptical about some of these figures, and I looked at that. They claimed that there was going to be a 60% saving, and in fact, it's outperformed that by 20%. The savings are far greater than they expected. And Waverley are using the same consultants. We're using the same people who did St Sidwell's Point Exeter, so that's very much in our favour. The Eclipse, which has been mentioned by Councillor Murray in Staines. Spelthorne, we're going to pick up their debts. Some would say, Councillor Murray said 43.5 million, some say 51 million. Difficult to believe Spelthorne's books, perhaps, I don't know. Opened in October 2024. Learner Pool, long delay for a year or so because of construction faults and whatever, but it's got 4.3G pitches attached. It claims 57% energy saving, but there is a very high insurance cost due to timber use in the construction. And I would like some confirmation we're not using timber and going to suffer the same problem with high insurance costed. That's been funded by the Public Works Loans Board and cash flow from Spelthorne, so we'll pick that debt in future to go with our debt for our own leisure centres. Blairgowrie Leisure Centre in Perthshire, Scotland, opened in 2025. It's attached to a school. Costs 37 million, only small. Same sort of like the Edge Leisure Centre attached to a school. And the Lakeland Forum Leisure Park in Fermanagh is a £70 million project, which is just finished piling last week. Okay, so 36 million. Not a lot compared to what's being spent elsewhere. It doesn't mean it's right, and none of us like to see costs rising all over the place. We don't know. We may not also have the number of people going to them without Councillor Austin's help and getting her entire family to get along there. We need a lot more people like Councillor Austin to help us out. But pending Dunsfold, the concern is Cranley is just a village, as everybody used to tell us. It's just a village, and should we be spending that money? It's never going to get spent, and they're never going to get it if we don't. So, I will be supporting this. Perhaps we could use some gas heating to save more money if people aren't opposed to that as a point of principle or whatever. We could save in more money, but let's hope everything goes all right, and as long as it is within budget, I will support this for the sake of Alfold and Cranley. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Follows, and then Councillor Williams. Councillor Follows.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I mean, it doesn't need gas. That's one of the joys of Passive House. It doesn't need it. Bearing in mind the events of the last sort of 36 hours, I suspect the procurement and use of fossil fuels is likely to be slightly more costly in the short term, if not the long. Councillor Murray, I agree with absolutely almost everything you actually said. I think Appendix 3, Graph 1 does try and model those different types of approach, and the Passive House option comes up easily the best. And actually, this chamber and ONS and various other briefings we've had has used quite a considerable amount of time discussing the various options. And I think you're very correct in the sense that this is really about thinking about the long term and trying to go against the short termism that often plagues the political sphere at every single level. Councillor Townsend and many of the other members of the executive, I actually missed out on this one, went up to Spelthorne to have a look at their leisure centre. I have to say, as a Devonian myself, I'm quite familiar with St Sidwell's Point. And this is about thinking about the long term. And considering I listened to, in this very chamber 1 week ago, all manner of proposals to unlawfully liquidate reserves to do things like car parking, I'm concerned to hear from the part of the opposition benches, not all of them, of course, part of the opposition benches, that things that would help so many children access things like sport and swimming, including her own, would not be something that you're in favour of doing. Obviously, children and leisure centres isn't as important as car parks and other random things we might do in our reserves. But I'm just going to bring us back in my last minute or two to LGR. I'm really glad to hear this evening there might be some movement on support for West Surrey's financial situation. We'll see how that goes, of course. But of course, it does need to be rather a lot of financial intervention from the government to get it into a position of being viable over the long term. And so I think, as with land transfers a few weeks ago, it's incredibly prudent of us, not just for Cranley, but for what we currently call Waverley, to invest now in our assets, knowing full well it is pretty unlikely that West Surrey are going to have the assets to invest in or the money to invest in those assets if they still have them. I think you're likely to see a slew of assets being sold across the whole territory, or privatized, or worse. And we need to invest now to ensure that there is investment at all. There's long been a dearth of investment out in the east of our borough. This is something that we address very clearly in this way. And I'm going to actually, apologies, I lied. I'm going to say one more thing as well, because it's about climate change. One of the things I'm most proud of this administration is that yes, there are a number of us here, including me, who believe very strongly that we need to do something about climate change. And we have a duty to do something about climate change, not just for ourselves, but for our children and for the residents of the future. But I also believe it's important for us to, A, make sure we can deliver that and pay for it. And also, we properly assess the co-benefits of anything that we do in the climate change sphere. It's why when we build our social housing, yes, it's great for its own sake, but it saves residents money, and we know how we can deliver it, and we can know how we can pay for it, and we can know how the houses then exist. Cranley Leisure Centre is one of those times where the business case for this materially improves over time as the cost base is more known and more secure. You know you are moving away from a volatile energy market. It's volatile now. Who the hell knows what it's going to be in 60 years? This is a prudent investment whilst also being rooted in a sensible environmentalism. It doesn't need to be an extreme. Can be moderate, it can be reasonable, it can be delivered well and on budget. So I'm very happy to support this for all the reasons I've outlined, and I want to thank those who have spoken very, very eloquently in support of this project tonight. I think I agree with every single word you've said, and I do strongly believe there's a majority in this chamber to get this done before Waverley ceases. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did think that we would hear suggestions from the direction of the Conservative group that, costs could be reduced by trimming the specification, particularly around the passive house standard. And Councillor Austin has done precisely that. She complains, but she does not present a real alternative. I mean, the reality is that tackling the issue of the dilapidated state of the Cranley Leisure Centre was kicked down the road by a previous Conservative administration. And the reality is that had it ever been tackled, we would not now be looking at this visionary and sustainable option that we have before us. As Councillor Murray correctly pointed out, build quality might lower headline capital costs in the short term, but it would increase the operating cost for decades. It would narrow the lifespan of the building, and it would embed higher carbon emissions into a public asset that should be serving this borough for generations. And we declared a climate emergency. We've committed to net zero by 2030, and our corporate strategy explicitly commits us to creating a more sustainable borough. And they are not decorative words. They must shape major capital decisions. As Councillor Townsend pointed out, a passive house plus leisure centre is not gold plating. It is a long-term financial prudence aligned with environmental responsibility. Lower energy demand means lower revenue pressures year after year, and that's particularly important for a facility like a leisure centre, which is inherently energy intensive. And we're talking about something like 9–10% of the total carbon emissions of the entirety of Waverley here in terms of the current Cranley Leisure Centre. And I would like to particularly recognise the excellent work of Councillor Liz Townsend. And having worked closely with Liz when she previously held the leisure portfolio, I know the depth of thought and care that has gone into the project alongside the outstanding officers in our leisure and sustainability teams. This has not been rushed. It's been carefully developed, collaboratively and with clear strategic intent. So, yes, we've got to manage costs responsibly, but let us not undermine the very principles that we have set for ourselves. If we are serious about sustainability, if we are serious about net zero and about building assets that endure, then Cranley should set the standard and not retreat from it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. There are 4 other speakers on my list: Councillor Long, Councillor Goodridge, Councillor Martin, Councillor Kenreid. Councillor Long.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a former lawyer for a Big Six energy retailer, it used to be my job to review marketing energy saving claims and ensure that they were legal, decent, honest and truthful. Working with the Energy Savings Trust, it was drummed into us that the most effective way to save money on energy is to design out the need for consumption, because, as Councillor Murray and Councillor Follows have already indicated, this provides increasing savings year on year for the full life of the asset. In addition to this, I find myself puzzled by the repeated and renewed requests for costings of a non-passive house option. This is based on a fundamental misconception that passive house is something that's added on. It isn't. It's a fabric-first, designed-in standard. We cannot begin to consider a non-passive house option without throwing away the current design entirely and redesigning the leisure centre from scratch with all the attendant wasted cost. And in doing so, we would be deliberately redesigning a less efficient building. I cannot begin to imagine why anybody would think this was a good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Goodridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The one thing that I want is to ensure that Cranley has a new leisure centre, because clearly it needs it. And I, however, am unhappy about the soaring costs that we are experiencing. I also appreciate, being practical, that if one delays the matter looking at the specification, if one did, there would be more delays, and with the situation in the Middle East as it is, and the consequences of that on inflation and everything else, that it is going to be a big problem if we delay. I just hope that we're now looking at the final sum rather than further increase in costs. And I have to say that I wouldn't be in this position if I'd had a choice from the beginning, but bearing in mind the position we are now in, I will not be voting against this.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I agree that, of course, we all want a new leisure centre for Cranley. It seems that every time that people like Councillor Austin or me say that we're not happy with the one option that's being provided, we're regarded as Luddites. Well, I'm sorry, but I would like to see an alternative option. It may be that we've had quoted at us a saving of £125,000 per year on energy savings. It may be with a different option, we could perhaps save 100,000 rather than 125,000 with a much lower capital cost. And I would like to understand what the alternatives are, and we've never been presented with those. So it may be that the passive house design is the right design and is the right solution, but we're simply not convinced. And I'm not going to vote against this, but I am going to abstain. I'm not happy. We haven't got enough information. We need more, and I think it's perfectly reasonable that we should have consistently asked for an alternative option, but we haven't been given one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kenreid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm a big fan of the regeneration of the new leisure centre in Cranley and being built to the Passive House standard. However, I do still have lingering concerns about the impact of parking with the building of the new leisure centre is going to have on Cranley and on the businesses in Cranley. I've had lots of reassurances, but I'm still uneasy about it. And I thought I would mention that. The other thing that I would like to make a request or even a plea, it says in section 9 consultation at 9.9, ward councillors have been kept up to date with progress on the project at each key milestone within the project. Now, I must assume that ward councillors mean Councillor Morrison and Councillor Townsend because they're the ward councillor. But being in the adjacent ward of Cranley East, I certainly have not felt that I have been kept up to date. So this is a plea that in future that we are kept up to date with the key milestones that are identified in 6.16. It's a bit of a moan from me, I know. I'm in favour of the leisure centre, but don't let's try and gild the lily by saying that we're keeping everybody up to date when I'm afraid we are not kept up to date. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beeman.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I was portfolio holder of responsibilities for leisure in 2019. And then we were talking about Cranley Leisure Centre, we had to close the swimming pools, I seem to recall. So I hate to think, I mean, I'm amazed the place is still functioning, quite frankly. Well, it's not a laughing matter. It's not a laughing matter at all because it must be costing a fortune to keep that place running at the moment, not to mention all the environmental consequences. All I would say is if I have a criticism at all, I think, you know, we're still talking about it now in 2026. You know, we haven't even put, you know, no wonder the costs have gone up. And I think I was always supporting this, you know, Farnham residents do support things outside Farnham. But I should be supporting this because I think it really does need to be, we have to be talking about opening it now, not just the construction. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a good long discussion. I'm going to take one more speaker, Councillor Hess, and then over to you, Councillor Merriweather. Councillor Hess.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for a bit of clarification, a fellow councillor earlier asked if the construction is timber. Can that question be answered tonight? As it was suggested that timber build attracts high insurance premiums. And I think we need to know if the council will be hit with very expensive insurance costs going forward. Could we be informed what the basic construction materials are? Thank you.
Councillor Hess, at the very, very, very beginning of this item, as with all the ones tonight, I say, are there any questions on clarity? May I move to you, Councillor Merriweather, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Listen, we've had some wonderfully eloquent remarks in support of this. I'm still astonished that Councillor Murray can remember the mid-60s quite so vividly. But if you can remember it, you weren't really there, isn't that? But well, let's move. Look, you know, the costs. The costs are the best estimates that we've come up with, and as everyone said, particularly Councillor Hyman, you know, we are benefiting from the lessons learned by all the people who have gone before us. And when we talk about this leisure centre, I'm slightly surprised that we just talk about it as being for Cranley. It's not for Cranley, it's for Waverley and a big chunk of West Sussex as well, I should imagine. So this is, from an economic point of view, you know, this is going to be, you know, a big deal for Waverley and for Cranley. Of course, no one's happy with the eye-watering inflation we've recently experienced, and particularly in the construction sector, which has tracked consistently above the Consumer Prices Index. But the Green Book, which is our guide that we are expected to follow, tells us that development decisions like this should not be constrained or prejudiced by a framework that elevates financial return above public purpose. Our role is not to maximize financial yield or even chase it, but to optimize public value within, yes, prudent financial stewardship. Councillor Townsend did mention SIL, and in paragraph 5.15 of the report, it does anticipate the application for additional strategic SIL funding. And of course, yesterday we published the recommendations of the strategic SIL EWG that still have to go to executive and then still have to come to this council to award £2.08 million to this project, which will go mostly to cover almost all of the additional borrowing that this report still discusses because the SIL issue hasn't been resolved. On the benefit side, Councillor Townsend talked about the monetary benefits, and a lot of people who are a lot more eloquent than I am have talked about the environmental impact. But the Green Book, as I referenced earlier, tells us that we should be trying to assess and even quantify so many other benefits besides that have to do with the quality of life, whether it's health, education, leisure, transport, employment, or the regeneration of the town centre. And in fact, one of my ambitions for this final year is to upgrade our assessment tools to do that the way we have already started to do, for example, with carbon pricing. So I am really pleased that the room seems to be reading in general support of this, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for the comments and for some of the support around the chamber. I'd just like to say that with Passive House, it doesn't bring uncertainty, it actually brings more certainty. It's a quality, not only for energy savings, but a quality design that has to go through a set process. Yes, there will be timber involved in it because timber reacts much better to a leisure centre environment than, say, steel within concrete. So it is recognised that using this timber will not only part of the Passive House construction, but also responds better, as I said. You know, we did listen to what the Overview and Scrutiny Committee came up with. We answered all of the questions there. I think people have forgotten all of the briefings we had with GT3, all of the briefings with Gale and Snowdon. We've provided a little précis of that information in Appendix 4, as well as a comparison of some costs, of some energy costs within Appendix 3 as well, to provide more information to members. You know, we have had historic reports on this. We can't keep regurgitating those reports every single time this comes to council. You know, councillors have responsibility. If they want to learn more, they can read back. But we did have an awful lot of information provided to us. And yes, Councillor Beaman, it has been a little while for this project to come to fruition. And partly, you know, it was during COVID as well. You know, we had those years when things just got delayed. So, you know, this is a real opportunity to build a quality leisure centre for Cranley. And you know, we've built in, we feel, prudent contingency at 12%. We have built in, we're going to value engineer and look at the costs, which we hope are going to be able to reduce some of those costs down. And, you know, I believe firmly that this is the right decision. You know, far from feeling, I think Councillor Austin said it gets more precarious. It doesn't. It actually gets less precarious. We know what guaranteed energy savings we can see. Passive house leisure centres, as Councillor Hyman has said, have outperformed their predicted energy savings. So I think this will provide a really high quality building for people that are in it, and it will provide health and wellbeing facilities for Cranley and all of our surrounding villages. And I would like, Madam Mayor, with your indulgence, to call for a recorded vote on this, please. And I believe I have the necessary support.
Yeah. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so Katie, over to you.
Councillor Austin.
Abstain.
Councillor Beeman.
4.
Councillor Busby.
4.
Councillor Coburn.
Abstain.
Councillor Crowe. 4. Councillor Davidson.
4.
Councillor Denis. Councillor Deuce.
4.
Councillor Earwaker.
4.
Councillor Fairclough.
4.
Councillor Follows.
4.
Councillor Gale.
4.
Councillor Goodridge.
Abstain.
Councillor Hess.
In favour?
Councillor Hyman.
4.
Councillor Keel.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Long.
4.
Councillor MacLeod.
4.
Councillor Martin.
Abstain.
Councillor Merriweather. Councillor Mirrlees.
4.
Councillor Morrison.
4.
Councillor Monroe.
4.
Councillor Murray.
4.
Councillor Kenreid.
4.
Councillor Ruth Reid.
4.
Councillor Rivers. Paul Rivers.
4.
Councillor Penny Rivers.
4.
Councillor Spence.
4.
Councillor Steiger.
4.
Councillor Liz Townsend.
4.
Councillor Philip Townsend.
4.
Councillor Ward.
4.
Councillor Weldon.
4.
Councillor White.
4.
Councillor Wicks. 4. And Councillor Williams.
4.
Point of order, Councillor Reeland hasn't been asked how he wishes to vote.
Sorry, Councillor Reline.
Yeah, I haven't declared, so it's okay. That is carried 33 votes in favour, none against, with 6 abstentions. So we come to the next item, item 13, lucky for some, 69 High Street. Are there any questions on clarity? Councillor Beeman and then Councillor Hyman. Councillor Beeman.
Yeah, well, reading the public report, you only get half the story, I think. And I'm really confused as to why the full story, which is really contained in the valuation report, is not, in fact, in open session.
Councillor Merriweather, would you like to answer? Is that a question?
No, I'm happy to because it contains commercially sensitive information that could prejudice everything that we do from now on, actually, regardless of what the decision is.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to clarify, questions at this point are questions to the mover of the motion, not to officers. But if it helps, the papers that have been printed on pink papers is because officers deem them to be exempt due to their commercial sensitivity under Schedule 12 of Local Government Act 1972. But I believe there have been some further discussions today about what information should be exempt and what may be able to be released to the public. And that will be reviewed tomorrow morning, and there may be further documentation that can be published. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hyman, was it you with another question?
Yes, thank you. Well, I did ask some questions yesterday and was told that I would get an answer yesterday from the officers, but I haven't had an answer to that at all, which concerns me. Specifically, there are a couple of issues. Firstly, in relation to the ownership, we've got a recommendation on page 330 in front of us at paragraph 2.1 asking for the allocation of £7.5 million from the housing revenue account to build homes on land which, my understanding at the moment, is that it has not been appropriated and purchased by the housing revenue account from the general fund. So I'm not sure whether we can actually agree to do that. Obviously, to bring forward appropriation and the sale as an urgent matter or whatever would be something we really couldn't think about tonight. I would expect we'd want to put it off to another day because it would be ridiculous to try and work our way through that as well as everything else that isn't in the report. We've got. I did ask for plans that were, according to the documentation in the pink papers, were provided to the consultants. We've only been shown ourselves, and this isn't exempt, shouldn't be, the ground floor plan, and we can't really work out what it is that's being proposed in front of us and whether it's acceptable or not. And of course, you know, whether or not this is in the public interest, whether or not we should be going forward with this. If we put it forward to the planning committee, they are going to be under heavy pressure to just pass it through regardless. And we should not be making a decision when we don't have the information that the consultants have been given by the council, as far as I'm concerned. So I don't think we've got enough information in front of us. Can we have see the plans? And can you please tell us, does the housing revenue account own this land, or did everything that we do in the budget, have we got to do that again because we were misinformed about all the budget dealings and everything else? Are we just trying to get ourselves out of the mess here and push something through that just creates more problems for us in future? I don't know, but I want to know.
Thank you,
is this?
Simon.
Can we please have an answer to the questions that I'd asked about the land and the plans?
Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, just Councillor Hyman, just to clarify that your email in respect of appropriation of the land was responded to today by officers, and in fact it is going to be dealt with by the proposer of the motion when they move their motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Point of personal explanation, I didn't mention appropriation of land in my email.
Thank you. Councillor Kenry, did you have a question?
I did, Madam Mayor. I'm fully aware that the executive have decided to go with option 2, and that we're being requested tonight to approve the budget for that. I did have a question that relates to all of the options there, and I think probably could be answered by Councillor Merriweather, and that is that could he identify by each of those options for land at the rear of 69 High Street, which ones would become a charge on the housing revenue account and which would not? Thank you.
Councillor Merriweather.
Currently none, because the land hasn't been transferred to the HRA, and Councillor Crowe will be addressing that in her opening remarks.
Thank you. So we'll move to the motion itself, and that is, I think, Councillor Crowe.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yes. So first of all, I would like to thank the
Do you
officers.
have a seconder?
Oh, I do have a seconder. Oh, yes, I do.
Councillor Merriweather. And do you reserve your right? You do. Councillor Crowe.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the officers for their incredibly hard work on getting us to this point. It's been, I know, really quite a slog for lots and lots of reasons. Officers have now completed the work looking at the different options for the land to the rear of 69 High Street. And the proposal we're bringing forward is to proceed with the delivery of 13 new affordable homes on the site. All these would be let at Waverley rent levels, which is 70% of the open market value. Council is being asked to approve just over 7.5 million from the HRA to deliver these homes and support the recommendation in option 2 as outlined in section 11.2. The team is also actively working with Homes England to secure grant funding through the new Social and Affordable Homes programme. And you will recall from previous comments regarding the affordable homes in Chiddingfold that we're already an approved investment partner. That funding would help reduce the level of financing required from the council. Officers have already had initial discussions on the likelihood of securing grant funding, alongside similar discussions for the Chiddingfold scheme, which was successful in securing around £600,000. Subject to a decision by council, officers will continue to progress the application. I just want to remind people as well that the scheme will be generating income for the HRA in terms of revenue. The team has been working closely to ensure that the design dovetails with the commercial development at the front of the site, removing any potential conflicts and introducing efficiencies in the overall design. The proposed scheme would be a high-quality development of 13 homes designed with sustainability and reducing the long-term financial costs for tenants in mind, and aligned with the council's commitment to net zero in operation. Now, I'm very aware that there have been concerns expressed about best value, and I would like to take this opportunity to remind people that best value goes wider than just figures on a spreadsheet. We also have to take into consideration, as Councillor Merriweather has reminded us many times, about social value, and this should not be seen as some sort of accidental byproduct, but as a starting point for all our homes. You'll have seen in your packs, I think, an assessment by Haverley Consulting Limited has concluded that selling the land would result in a loss, and of course a sale would result in a loss of an opportunity to develop housing properties in central Godalming. Furthermore, Haverley's opinion regarding acquiring comparable properties from the open market is also limited, because there are limited numbers of new apartments in Godalming or elsewhere in Waverley, and what properties there are smaller, and most are not meeting Waverley's design standard for apartments. They have limited sustainability and zero carbon improvements. Haverley concludes that there is currently insufficient available apartments on the open market which would meet the quality, the design and space requirements of the proposed 13 apartments at 69 High Street. Here we have an invaluable opportunity to build some much needed wonderful homes in our town centre. This will contribute to the ongoing regeneration of the High Street, and the whole scheme satisfies our financial, our corporate and our social strategies. I very much hope you will support the recommendations outlined in option 2, section 11.2, and I want to just make an additional point here, which I've been given some wording on. We also would like that council to approve, subject as permitted under section 19(1) of the Housing Act 1985 and section 122 of the LGA 1972, we would like council to approve the appropriation of land to the rear of 69 High Street from the general fund to the housing revenue account for the purpose of delivering this housing. Thank you very much,
For
Madam.
the sum of how much money?
Do you have a
For how
seconder
much money?
for that? Yes.
It needs to be clarified.
So now we're going into debate on that. Councillor Beeman.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm getting awfully confused because I've got one public document and I'm now told that some of the pink papers will become public knowledge. Is that correct? If it is, then I'd like to know what places pink paper is going to become public knowledge.
Madam Mayor, my motion to move council into exempt session, partly to address Councillor Beeman's question and also to address the valuation of the land transfer that's been proposed by that alteration. We cannot speak about it in open session, but I do think you deserve to know the clarity of this. And so I would motion to go, I hope briefly, into exempt session, Madam Mayor.
I just find it amazing that we show it transparency here.
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
And is everybody in favour of going into exempt? Okay, I have two people on my list from before. The first is councillor Austin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You will be pleased to know I'm not going to into the minutiae of valuation techniques. This project is folly still, even after all these discussions. Let's start by talking about our duty to the HRA. Under the Housing Act 1985, HRA money must directly benefit council tenants by improving council homes, increasing housing supply, and fulfilling statutory landlord duties. But the requirement to increase supply is qualified. It is not absolute. We cannot support delivery of homes at any price. Paragraph 3.4 of the report states delivering housing will support the council's aspiration to regenerate the high street by encouraging footfall and local spend. Well, let's be clear on that too. A town centre location is not a lawful justification for using HRA funds when a cheaper, better value option exists elsewhere. The HRA cannot be used for a high street regeneration or footfall generation as specified in the report, or for social value for the wider community or businesses. Any benefit to the general public is not lawful for HRA expenditure. It is ring-fenced for tenants. The residents who rely on the HRA, some of the most vulnerable in our borough, depend on us to safeguard that account so their homes are maintained and safe. When millions are written off under the banner of social value, it is HRA tenants who will lose out. Looking at the exempt papers, I see no justification for proceeding with anything other than option 4, but varied to sell with planning permission, but for a non-affordable housing in order to maximise that value we've all been talking about. Achieving planning permission has already been budgeted for, so the remaining costs would be transaction fees and also realisation of any capital loss. I believe we must therefore choose the least worst option. Take that smaller capital loss now. The scheme delivers a negative net present value of millions, a long 47-year payback. It costs 7.53 million, and notwithstanding affordable housing valuation, it still produces homes valued at millions less. For the same cost as building these, Waverley could build many more comparable flats on the open market. They could immediately enter the HRA and be managed just like the rest of our portfolio. A quick search online today for Godalming shows us that there are 11 studios available at an average of 150,000 to buy. 37 one-bed flats available in Godalming at an average price of 230,000. And 65 two-bed flats available at an average of around 400,000, some more, some less. Many of these are brand new, high-spec flats. We've spent a lot of time talking about these valuations, and everyone now is thoroughly confuddled. Let me get this very straight. The average delivery cost of 69 High Street is an eye-watering £577,000 per flat. This is bad value. This means millions of losses to the HRA are becoming attributable to social value. This fails in every duty we have as councillors to the housing revenue account. Finally, our own asset investment strategy in section 6.2 states, all property assets will be assessed to determine if the cost of holding the asset outweighs the benefit. I believe 69 High Street has crossed that threshold. This scheme fails the HRA ring fence. It, in my view, fails best value. It delivers too few homes for too much money and places an unacceptable burden on the tenants we are required legally to protect. I don't even understand why it's before us. I reject it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd also like to pass on my thanks to Candice and Joe, who helped me with these figures today and made it clear to me, so I do appreciate that. Look, tonight's decision is an important one, no doubt about it. And I want to begin by recognising something very clearly. Everyone in this chamber shares the same objectives. and we all want more affordable homes. We want to support residents struggling with housing costs. And we want to see our town centres thrive. There's no disagreement, I think, about these aims. But the question before us tonight is not about intent, it's about judgment. We've been asked to approve a scheme costing £7.5 million, which on completion is estimated to be worth a lot less. Now, that description of that loss and that difference is social value. And Councillor Merriweather and Councillor Fellows and everybody else will talk about this, and they talk about it regularly. Now, we have in private session tried to come up with what that figure is, and I don't think we have actually come up with what that figure is, but that is what we're looking at, is the difference, and that is that figure. So let's try to be honest with residents and ourselves about what that actually means. This proposal does not proceed because it makes financial sense in any traditional way. No bank, no commercial developer, no Dragon's Den investor would undertake this project on those terms, and Mark will agree with me on that. It proceeds only if we, as a council, decide that the social outcomes justify the public subsidy. There is a legitimate debate, but it must be approached with clarity and responsibility. We're also committed to borrowing £3.5 million, potentially alongside grant funding, which is not yet guaranteed. And if we don't get that, we will have to come out of reserves. And we're accepting a payback approaching half a century. Is this the best use of public resources to deliver affordable housing for the people of Waverley? If we are asking our current tenants across this borough to subsidise 13 flats, and we must be confident that this represents maximum social benefit, not simply a worthy project. This is why it is a totally different decision from the Cranley Leisure Centre one, which has a community benefit, literally hundreds of thousands of residents over its lifetime. This one will only benefit 13 tenants at any one time. And I won't mention Passive House again, as we've discussed it a lot, but it is integral to this design and the cost of these flats. And financial assumptions made several years ago may no longer hold true today. So, Madam Mayor, leadership is not measured by how easily we approve these projects, but nor by how loudly we oppose them. It is measured by our willingness to ask difficult questions, weigh competing responsibilities, and make decisions that remain defensible not just tonight, but 10 or 20 years from now. So is ultimately a values decision. And does it deliver the greatest possible benefit to the residents of the whole of Waverley, both today and in the future? Unfortunately, I do not think it does, and therefore I cannot vote for the £7.5 million of funding from the HRA. And I agree with Councillor Austin, and I ask the executive to seriously look at option 4. Madam Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Follows.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I wonder if instead of buying houses on the Deer Park development in Farnham, which we did, which the Mayor and I were at on Friday, perhaps instead we should have proposed a 14-storey tower block in Farnham, because that would have been the best social value for residents in Farnham. And it's obvious that you can make all sorts of mad statements if you decide to take them out of context completely. But before I go into some of the details, can I first of all thank the officers who have worked on this, because they've had to go through quite a lot as well, not just tonight, but over the last few months. I also want to thank the portfolio holder who just went through the scrutiny session that should have taken place several weeks ago. That happened in exempt because the papers are confidential. I sat there at ONS, as did Councillor Merriweather, and almost all the questions that you asked in that exempt session are ones that I am frankly staggered were not asked in that scrutiny session. I don't know why you didn't ask them. I can only think that some people in this room think it's more appropriate to do some form of gotcha session in a full council rather than do their responsible duties as councillors, but that's come up before. Councillor Murray, no commercial developer builds affordable and social housing. We all know this, you know this, unless they're made to. And we also know, partly because of conversations that we had tonight even, that that being made to is decreasing for all the reasons that we've discussed, viability assessments, SIL, other infrastructure issues. So we know that our abilities to make them do it are becoming less and less, which means we are only into looking really at the things we deliver ourselves. All of the arguments, by the way, about low carbon, passive house type assets for social housing apply at least as much to social housing as they do to the leisure centre, because these at the end of the day are about the savings our residents will achieve. These aren't, by the way, even things that Councillor Merriweather has banked in the social value, which he quite legitimately could have done per property over the amount of time. We also discussed this, there's a lot of what-ifery. I've only got 2 minutes, so I'll try and do this quickly. A lot of what-ifery about this. We could have used the money to do this over there, or that over there, or this type of thing. Tell me where, and we'll do those too. We've got, you know, good couple of thousand on the housing register. If you've got 20, 30 houses that you know are right next to each other, as we proved at the Deer Park in Farnham, we'll buy them. Chiddingfold, we built them. Otford Ridge Site C, we've built them. Other places in Cranley, we've bought them. We need the housing. However we get the housing, short of actually breaking the law, tell me and we'll buy the housing. Actually, Brightwells that came up earlier, I don't think we even could let out because, of course, they were built at EPCD, which means you can't actually lawfully rent them as social housing. So that one would have been a grand idea if somebody had built them to a reasonable standard to actually let. But of course, that's where we get back to private developers. It surprises me not at all that Councillor Austin would like to see a private developer realise some gain from this. What I want to see is social housing for people to live in, different types of social housing. By the way, I've lived in multiple different flats and other parts of the town centre of Godalming at various different points in the last 10 years. It's incredibly useful for people who don't have a car, by the way, because you don't need to store it. You can use the accessible public transport that exists all around. We need lots of different housing options. There's actually been the housing needs assessment, I think, attached to this report just to re-establish that point again. We also need housing that endures for the public good. We aren't planning to sell this tomorrow. That's why we're not fussed about it making a loss on paper. And that's when you even believe it makes a loss. Because if you haven't crystallised that loss, it doesn't make that loss. And that's without counting about 15 other types of social value that the officers here and the portfolio holder have left out just so that this was as reasonable a like-for-like comparison as possible, because they could have added dozens of other things, as you heard from the portfolio holder and exempt. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. There are a few other speakers, but I am aware that it's 10 o'clock, but I intend to press on because I think it will focus our discussions. Councillor Earwaker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've listened to all the calculations in exempt session. I would just refer councillors to page 330. We're being asked to approve the allocation of £7,532,000, £229 from the housing revenue account to deliver 13 new affordable homes. I've done the maths and I need to correct your figures, Councillor Austin. It's actually £579,402 per flat. I'm in agreement with Councillor Austin, Councillor Murray, and I will be voting against. Thank you.
Councillor Liz Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify and just to put some things into context. First of all, it's so easy to pull up Google and pull off a list of flats, isn't it? We're not comparing like for like as we are doing here. We don't know if those flats are technical space standards. We don't know what their heating is. We don't know what their EPC ratings are. We don't know where they are. We don't know if they are near to each other. So I would not really, if you're going to be thinking tonight and judging this based on a spurious list that has been taken off of Google, you can't compare that. What you have got to look is, you have got to take into account the quality of these, the technical space standards, the energy savings, the fact that they are in one block, the fact that they are a town centre location, that does affect the value, and we all know that. I think that when we're looking at, you know, this saying, oh, well, we can just sell the land and a private developer will build it, we have got no way of knowing that anyone's going to deliver housing on this site. But what we do know is we will deliver housing on this site. We have got sites all over the place. Look at the Wallmead. We have got sites all over the place which haven't been delivered. You could sell this site and it could stay empty for years and years and years when we could have 13 occupied flats there. And we have to take into account the current stagnated rate market that we are looking at. There is no guarantee that there will be any homes other than if we deliver those homes, good quality homes. And it isn't unusual for there to be a payback of 50 years on the HRA. That just isn't unusual. And I know that there is a value, and I appreciate that the value of these flats. But what you are thinking about is providing these homes in the centre of Godalming, which we will deliver for families who will pay rent. This is not going, we can't conflate the two of, not conflating taxpayers with our tenants. We must make sure that we refer to the tenants and the payback from the tenants and the HRA. So I think it's really important that we say we have had sites in the centre of Hazelmere. We have had sites in the centre of Farnham that have not been delivered by developers. So come on, let's look at thinking about the deliverability of this actual, of this site by us, and knowing that we would deliver on this site. So I think, the fact that if it gets sold off and doesn't get delivered, then there'll be no social value whatsoever. And I think it's really important for you to think about that delivery as well as all the other considerations. It's as I said, it is so easy to assume that one flat is comparable to the maintenance costs of lots of flats in one block. You can't compare that as well. We brought this up before. You haven't included the maintenance of having a scattered estates all over the place in one flat here, one block here, another block there. When you've got a whole block of flats, you can then be far more, the maintenance costs will be far easier to control. So, let's not be looking at a list from Google. Let's be looking at the facts on the page.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Councillor Townsend isn't giving us the facts on the page, is she? And it doesn't tell us whether it's going to be 3-storey, 4-storey. If it's going to be 4-storey, we're not allowed to see the plans. I mean, I've asked, but we can't see those. This may be setting an unwanted backland precedent. It may not be practical, like the last planning application, which was thrown out as being worthless, even though we bought it on this land on the assumption that it had that planning, on the basis that planning could be built out. We don't know whether there's going to be lifts if this is 4-storey, and if so, who'll pay for maintenance. We don't know, is there going to be luxury apartments with roof gardens? Can we prevent the future right to buy sales of those? Probably not. Are there any restrictions on dog or cat ownership? Is it annoying other neighbours? We know the parking spaces aren't going to be there, one EV and one disabled, which will be empty or are going to be fought over hotly. We don't know which. The back road up there is double yellows throughout. There is no allowance for deliveries, Royal Mail, vans, emergency vehicles, taxis, removal lorries, carers, vet visitors, or any drop-off collection of your shopping or goods. I mean, what about all your Christmas shopping? Where do you do it? You've got to cart it from a car park miles away. Of course, you haven't got a car. You've got to get someone to give you a lift. And everybody's got to park unlawfully on the double yellows if they're dropping you off. 50 residents with no parking. Is that realistic? I mean, this is cramming, and yet we're being told that all the other options that are out there available, all the other places we could possibly buy instead, far cheaper, are not going to be as good. So let's forget all that. Let's look at the facts. The facts are that actually we are looking at, we are being asked to, with the amendment, which I'd like to concentrate on, we are being asked to transfer the land, appropriate the land to the HRA from the general fund for the sum of £1.4 million, when, as we know from page 341, it's worth half that amount of money. We've been told that, it might be worth more, but you tell me, where does any report say that Waverley is exorbitant?
Councillor Hyman, I'm going to stop you there. And I'm also going to say we have 4 other speakers. we have Councillor Kenreid, Councillor Goodrich, Councillor Martin, Councillor Beeman. And I'm going to stop it there because that's
Well,
been
I'd like to move in
45
that case
minutes.
because no one else is moving.
Councillor Hyman.
May I move an amendment?
No, you cannot. And
What?
Not while the mayor's speaking,
No.
councillor Hyman. Let
Okay.
the mayor speak.
I was saying that we have 4 other speakers and then we're going to call this debate because it's been over 45 minutes and we still have to finish this item. Councillor Kenreid.
Madam Mayor, what I'm going to say is not going to make me very popular,
Good. Move
but it is a matter of conscience for me. It's a matter of conscience for me, and it's a sincerely held belief. When I asked a question in closed session about providing figures on Chiddingfold, Councillor Merriweather told us that Chiddingfold is not the centre of Godalming, so he dismissed it offhand. I'd like to remind him, I got a degree in engineering, and I can confirm to him that the value of the land will be different. The cost of building the homes will be more or less the same because you're using the same workforce. So we haven't got that information. It isn't going to be provided because it won't support the position being put forward currently by the executive. Although the administration's objective in acquiring this site were honourable, my opinion is that its decision to stray into real estate, an area where local authorities generally have very little expertise, has proved to be a gamble that has not paid off. Fortunately, Waverley's exposure is nowhere near the same scale as that of several of our neighbouring councils in West Surrey. Without council approval of the budget to build council housing on this site, any loss will be contained within the general fund. Hence, every household in Waverley, through council tax and fees, will be making a contribution to any loss or profit if we get one. However, should we agree the budget to build social housing on this site, our tenants, the least well off in our society, will be funding the losses identified in the exempt papers. Although I have been supportive of this administration's decision to acquire the site to regenerate Godalming High Street, I cannot support any proposal that requires our tenants to pay over the odds for our mistakes and for the housing revenue account to pay more than they need to provide social housing. Although one of Waverley's corporate priorities is the delivery of social rented homes, this must not be achieved at any price. To be clear, the executive recommendation is proposing that the least well off in our society pays above the open market value for 19 bedrooms in these 13 properties. Close on 400k per bedroom. When spending our tenants' money, best value must always be a guiding principle. Our tenants across the borough obviously cannot afford social housing in central Godalming. Perhaps, and I have been asked this question by Councillor Merriweather earlier today, could I identify land where we could build? And I can tell him that if we were to focus on building council houses on all of the dilapidated garage sites around the borough, then I'm sure we could make that work for our residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Goodrich.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At overview and scrutiny, when I attended as a substitute, I said, when you've got a hole, stop digging. And the decision was taken to buy this property some years ago now. And it is proving to be a somewhat black hole where we keep digging and losing more money. Now, we've already lost some money, and that was made clear in the exempt session. But it at least could be measured in hundreds of thousands. rather than if you keep digging, the losses then start getting 6, 7 figures. So it is time to stop digging. The eloquent speeches by Councillor Murray, Austin and Reid are things that I totally agree with, so I'm not going to repeat it. Councillor Townsend talks about, you know, if we develop it, we'll get on with it. It'll all be frightfully quick, rather than private developers who take ages to do anything. How long have we owned this land already? And what progress have we made so far? We haven't even issued a planning application. So suggest that, you know, we as a council are pretty good at developing and getting things done is absolute the untruth. And therefore, I will not be supporting this because I think our money could be spent very much better on social housing in Godalming, but not here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Many of the points that I wanted to make have already been made and very eloquently made too. I reject a lot of the criticism of the leader concerning ONS. I think he's overbearing in that direction. Councillor Townsend asked us to look at the facts. Well, the facts for me cry out that this is a money pit. We've paid far too much for the site. We're not doing very well the commercial side. And now we're being asked to pay SEPTA to agree to £7.5 million for 13 homes, a mix of 2 studios, 5 one-bedrooms and 6 two-bedrooms, at an average cost we've here of £579,000. It's simply too much. I think it's absolutely wrong. And we should not be doing this, and I will not be supporting the recommendation. We should be looking at option 4 rather than doing this. I would like to see the executive go back and consider option 4 in rather more detail than they have so far. But I will certainly be voting against this recommendation, and I urge other councillors to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beaman.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I find it completely regrettable that an administration that seeks to be transparent is still withholding 2 of the pink paper reports, because those contain, and in fact, some of the figures are now removed from the subsequent appendices. And you've been asked the question why. I mean, quite frankly, I'm not going to go over those arguments. I just find it amazing that we can even contemplate spending 7.5 million to deliver 13 new affordable sustainable homes, many of which are just studios and 1 bedroom. But I should be voting against it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I know there are 2 other speakers who would like to speak. Are they new points? Are they new points? Okay, Councillor Gale, you're not first. It's Councillor Davidson, Councillor Williams, and then Councillor Gale. If they are new points, Councillor Davidson.
Well, it's going to be a variation, I expect. But may I start by saying that I fully support the idea of having a 14-floor development in the middle of Farnham. I think that would be great. And it'll probably meet a lot of our housing needs. I fully support the idea that we and recognise the fact that we need more affordable housing and, in fact, more council housing. So I'm slightly torn. But during the debate, I listened very carefully to what Councillor Reid, Councillor Murray, Councillor Austin have mentioned about whether we're doing the right thing in terms of our costs, and particularly for Godalming. Councillor Reid mentioned there's a lot of garages around which the council own, which could well be used for development, potentially. I know there will be difficulties doing that. I'm familiar very much with what we've got in my own home patch. It was mentioned by our leader and members of his executive in the last administration that we should push ahead with development of the fairground car park in Haslemere, which would create more than 30 affordable houses. But I sense that the focus has been on Godalming, and the resources of our officers have been focused on Godalming. And I regret the fact that the developments in Haslemere have not been pursued. They've got a greater value in terms of provision for services to our community. And I also have some concerns, because it's judgmental about quality vs cost. You can push the quality argument too far. And you say, oh, we've got to have quality, we've got to have quality. But at what cost? And I do feel somewhat suspicious, as I think Councillor Reid has pointed out, at the cost of the development of these particular 13 dwellings. So although I want to see more affordable housing, more housing provided, or more dwellings provided for those who can't afford it in our community, I feel I just can't support this particular investment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, short and to the point, please.
I will do my very best. And I think the point that I would really want to make is that we are where we are. I've listened with a lot of sympathy to points which have been made. And we are talking here about a housing development which is costly in terms of housing individual costs per housing unit. But we have to consider what the alternative is. Councillor Murray and Councillor Martin are correct that if we do not agree this proposal, the only alternative that could be adopted is option 4 in section 11.4 of the paper. In other words, secure planning consent for the 13 units and sell the land. If we do that, there is no guarantee that there will be any development. And if there is any development on that land, our experience, and speaking here as a Godalming councillor, of some of the housing developments undertaken by private developers in central Godalming to date has not been good. We also see that option 4 states very clearly that if we adopt this option, there's a risk of capital loss. You know, we may not want to be where we are now, but we are, and we would potentially risk a capital loss if we went ahead with that option. Against that, we have got the opportunity to deliver and secure the social value of 13 new sustainable, affordable council homes. And that is, on balance, I think, the option that we need to take. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for letting me speak. I just want to pick up on something that Councillor Williams has just said and Councillor Townsend said previously. If we don't build on the land, maybe nobody will. However, in our papers tonight on page 330, which is white, it's been put up as a positive that a nearby example is 61 to 65 High Street, which has approved planning permission for a mixed-use scheme comprising commercial space at the front, 9 homes to the rear. So people are building. It doesn't mean to say that if we sell option 4, nobody is going to do it. We cannot predict what somebody might do in the future, but we can predict that we will lose some money if we carry on with this. And the loss of the money, the capital loss, is going to be paid for by our tenants, the people that really can't afford it. Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Chairman, if I may. Paragraph.
What is your point of order?
It is part 4.1 of the Constitution, procedure rules 15.7, amendments to motions, which states an amendment to motion must be relevant and should either be to refer the matter to an appropriate body or individual, including the leader, executive or committee for consideration or reconsideration, or to amend the wording. And I have asked that I am allowed, as is my right here under 15.7, to make a motion. I would like to move that this matter be referred back to the executive committee for reconsideration, because of the amount of people who are obviously would prefer option 4, but we're not allowed to move option 4. All that we can do is refer it back to the executive for reconsideration. And as no one else has moved that, I would like to do so before you close the debate. Thank you. I'm looking for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Murray.
So we are now going to debate that amendment. Yes, it's been seconded by Councillor Murray. It is 10:30, everybody. I am not stopping until we finish this item.
I know this is, like I say, we all know it's a difficult thing. Councillor Hyman has brought a motion to delay this decision. That's all he's asked to do. He's only asked to take it back to the executive, look at it all again. You know, we can bring it back and we can discuss it. Tonight, we're going to commit to this decision. And I don't think that the members here are really, really convinced it's the best thing. And I think, yes, you could win the vote, leader, but I think it's a big decision. And I think it would be, it's not, you're not convinced. Even a couple of your own councillors are not convinced it's the best thing. So I think there's nothing wrong with saying, let's have a look at it again. We do it all the time. I know you think, okay, well, we've got LGR, and if we don't get it done, it's all going to be a thing. But this is a big decision. And but thank you, Madam Mayor. That's my feeling on it. It's not a bad thing to look at it again.
Before anybody else speaks, I'm going to speak. I've done a lot of listening. But one of the things, I am no expert on money or on very much, but as far as I can see it in very simple terms, if we do not do this, we are saying to all of the residents of Godalming that there is no affordable housing in Godalming for their children who want to live here, who want to work here, but cannot afford to live here. That is not right. Councillor Follows.
So just following on from your points there, this would be some of the only social affordable housing in the centre of Godalming. And I have to say, I do resent the notion that the executive haven't given option 4 due cause, because effectively this goes back to the executive. We're being asked to effectively review the same 4 options again. And the options that we went through are very, very clear. You've spoken, many of you, about this being a loss, but the loss would only crystallise in a real and meaningful way if you sold it, which, by the way, is the thing that some of you are asking that we actually do. You would make a loss on quite a lot of our social houses if you sold them, but fortunately, because they're social housing that we want to keep as social housing, we're not selling them.
Is Councillor Follows allowed to speak twice on this? Is he speaking to what's the motion that's just been proposed?
He's speaking on the amendment.
I'm speaking to the amendment, and as it's being referred back to the executive, I think it's extremely appropriate that I be asked that I put my hand up to speak. So I will be voting against this amendment because I believe the executive has had a full and thorough discussion of all of the options. I do not believe I think it'd be a third or perhaps fourth time around would make me feel any different about it. And I also don't wish to crystallise the very thing that many of you have said that you were actually concerned about, which is a loss. I want to see affordable housing in Godalming town centre, where people can actually use the sustainable transport that surrounds them, where people, by the way, can walk to the shops quite comfortably, having done it many, many times. And can use all of the amenities around them, which is what we do when we have high street developments. And I just want to add one other thing as well, because Councillor Townsend, I'm sure, would have said it. Councillor Gale, you've referred to at least one application that has consent. The Woolmead had consent. Dunsfold had consent. How many other applications in this room, in this chamber, in this borough, up to about 5,000 units, have consent but have not been built? Giving them consent, that is no problem whatsoever. It's the developers actually going and building it out that continues to be the problem. I know for sure that we will do it. And I actually just want to also comment very briefly on something Michael Goodridge said, Councillor Goodridge said. There are officers in this room and who are probably watching this who have personally been part of the development and design of hundreds of properties, both in this administration and previously. To say that there's no experience delivering housing, particularly social housing, in this borough is offensive to those officers. And actually, I would go so far as to say that I hope those members acknowledge that and apologise in due course. But the executive will, I am sure, only give the consideration it is previously given, which is that we do not wish to crystallise a loss and we wish to see affordable social housing in Godalming. I suggest we move to a vote on this amendment and go back to the substantive.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you. I'm speaking to the amendment, which I will support. I reject, Madam Mayor, the statement that we are delivering any kind of message to anybody by. I think the message that I'm really concerned that we would be delivering is, I think, and I hope that many other councillors support me, I feel we are failing in our duty to the HRA. I'm worried about that, and I think that you should take that on board as an executive and consider very strongly the feedback from your fellow councillors. Listen to what we are saying. I am seriously worried about it. I'm worried about the basis on which you've made the decision, because as far as I can see, the HRA money is ring-fenced. We are not allowed to include wider social value. It must be all about how we directly benefit those tenants. And I'm seeing lots of excuses about a Godalming town centre, which are actually not justifiable under the HRA. I'm concerned we are breaking our duty to the HRA. The other thing the HRA, all of these discussions require us to do, which we are sensibly debating tonight, is the opportunity cost of making this decision. And the opportunity cost of doing it is substantial. It is millions of pounds. And we cannot just say, oh, well, that's fine. It's a really nice thing to have got flats in the centre of Godalming, so let's just crack on, even though it's £600,000 a flat. I mean, goodness me, that is just, on any benchmark of the best flats you could possibly buy, premium, you wouldn't deliver them. You deliver them for less than that. So anyway, I will be fully supporting the amendment because it does need more thought. We need to be very serious about our duty to the HRA and actually the higher bar that it sets. And if we lose this, I will be obviously voting against the main amendment, the main motion. Thank you.
Councillor Weldon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing at all to say about the substance of this debate. All I want to do is to talk to the amendment. I cannot see the need for the amendment. If you are against the substantive proposal, all you need to do is to vote against. Necessarily, the executive will then need to think again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, there's been much hand-wringing and heart-wrenching about the value of social housing, and I totally understand the value of it and the social value of it. We have, in the earlier debate on the Crown Leisure Centre, taken due account of that. However, I cannot really see why we should ask the tenants who are contributing their rents to our housing revenue account should be paying twice the value of the land in order to avoid a loss in our revenue account. This is a money pit, and we should not sanction it getting any worse. The accommodation is crammed in, is overpriced, it lacks parking. Disappointingly, for a socially aware council, it's got no proper M4-3 disabled facilities. I could go on. Money-wise, I note concerns that tenants may exempt their right to buy long before the end of the payback period, further reducing the expected income. The net income is insufficient to cover the overall cost of the scheme. No wonder we're looking at a pile of pink papers which we don't want the public to see. To put a further 7 million into a project with a negative return is something that I wouldn't put my own money in, I wouldn't put my granny's money in, and I don't expect our tenants to have to put their money in or anybody else to put their money in. I do, though, quite understand what the leader said, that if we send this back to the executive, they'll just send it back again. However, I will be supporting the amendment and hope that they can think more clearly and see that option 4 is by far the best thing. Let's admit that these things are getting a little bit out of hand and take it on their nose and move forward. I would draw your attention to a comment on paragraph 10.7 on page 336 about the risk that by not continuing with this project, the council, i.e. those pushing this scheme, could face reputational damage. Reputational damage is the most important thing the executive can think about, which is why, sadly, I think it will come back to this council. I hope this has not become an ego project, as like another development that Waverley took on previously when it was not competent to manage the project, this is in danger of becoming this councillor's Brightwells. We should accept the realities of the situation, take a loss on our revenue account rather than lumbering the money on our tenants, and dispose of this property at the earliest opportunity. I will be supporting the amendment to send it back to the executive, but when it comes back, or if we have to tonight, I will vote against putting 7 million into a project that isn't worth it.
Thank you. Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you. I'm just going to speak to the amendment because some things have been said which I think are important to the amendment and which I'm going to repeat when it comes to the substantive vote, if it comes to the substantive vote. We're not talking about a further 7.5 million. We're talking about the additional building costs. This is not at any price. It's just not. Everybody has in front of them in this room Appendix 2. It's exempt for a reason, because the officers have advised it should be exempt because they don't want to prejudice any future commercial negotiations. But Appendix 2 makes it very, very clear. It's not at any price. This project will pay for itself. There's no taxpayer subsidy. There's no tenant subsidy. The rents from this project will pay for it. And this project will subsidise the HRA to the tune of millions of pounds, not the other way around. It's there, Appendix 2. You might not like it. You might not agree with it. It might not be what you found on Google, but that's the analysis that our officers have put together. And I think that's, I just think, you know, that's the tip of the iceberg, but I just want to make that abundantly clear. It's in the papers. Thank you.
Councillor Liz Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to say a few points. And one of the points I would like to make is that, and building on what I said previously, we are seeing market failure to deliver housing that is affordable. That is why councils have to build housing, because of market failure. You know, all affordable housing that is provided by councils is because developers won't build that affordable housing. So whether it's a registered provider, whether it's a council, that is being built because of market failure to build housing for people that is affordable. I don't know why you're frowning, because that is the truth. Market rate housing is called market rate housing. It's not called affordable market rate housing. All the schemes that the government has ever put in place to try and create affordable housing has pushed prices up, and that is a fact. You can look on first homes, starter homes, all of it has pushed prices up. The only affordable housing that is being delivered by councils and by registered providers. Registered providers charge about 80% of market rates for rent. We are looking at 70%
Point of order, Madam.
of
Madam Mayor,
market
I'm
rates.
just concerned we're not speaking to the amendment. Oh, thank you.
I am speaking to the amendment. The reason why I'm demonstrating that we need to deliver this housing rather than just selling off the site is because And the very reason we're here is because of that market failure. So I would think, before you start casting this away, think about the money that we've already invested in this. Think about the commercial which is being delivered in the front of this site. Think about what could be delivered on this site rather than selling it with the planning permission for our development that we have put together with that planning permission, which, you know, the high quality, you're talking about, oh, well, we don't need to deliver such high quality, but we are delivering high quality housing. That will not get delivered by a developer. They will scrimp and save on it, and they will maximise their profits, and they will not build the quality affordable housing that we would like our tenants to live in. So don't think you're just going to sell this site and they're just going to build that housing that we've created, that 13 flats, because it won't be delivered in the same way that this council will deliver that housing. Thank you.
Councillor Crowe, you have a right to reply.
To what am I actually replying?
To the amendment.
Well, I think we have all agreed on the executive that we are not interested in supporting this amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hyman, you also have a right to reply.
I have to sum up, don't I? As a proposer of the motion, is that correct? Thank you very much. Well, we've heard an awful lot of any excuse to do the wrong thing. I've just had 10 minutes of it, haven't I? No, there really isn't any excuse, as far as I'm concerned, for charging the housing revenue account twice the amount of money that the land is worth in order to be able to, so that tenants can subsidise the general fund mistake in overpaying for the land and property in the first place. There is no excuse whatsoever, as Councillor Austin has said, for paying excessive amounts of money for individual flats when we don't have to do so. Just and again, as Councillor Erica said, it's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds, well over £500,000 plus the land cost per flat. And there is no need for us to pay that money. And that's woking economics, quite frankly. We need to look around. You see the mistakes that councils and councillors who think they're doing the right thing, all doing what they think is great for social value and really good for residents, and all of a sudden someone has to pay for it. Well, someone does have to pay for this. The extra large amount of money, half of the £1.4 million being asked under a late amendment that turned up this evening to pay £1.4 million for land worth half that amount, that came in front of us without that amount being stipulated. I mean, you know, how transparent is this? I really think we simply have to make this come back to us, come back through the executive to us, hopefully with option 4, which is what a lot of people here would prefer, given proper consideration by the executive this time. Well, we need the facts. We need the information in front of us about what is this development going to be like, because Councillor Townsend told us it was going to be that this is going to be absolutely wonderful compared to what else is out there. Well, we're not allowed to see the plans. I've asked for them. We can't see them. So please, can we find out what is involved in this? Does it have lifts? Is it going to be easy to maintain? What exactly is it that we're being asked to pay well over the top for, and that we think tenants will value so much that they're quite happy to pay well above inflation rates in their rent rises, so that this can be paid for? We have a duty to the HRA. Councillor Weldon asked whether it was why couldn't we just vote against the motion? Well, this is actually one of your own councillors wanted to propose that we went for option 4. We've been told that you're not allowed to do that. Other people here wanted to go for option 4. The only option is to save the embarrassment of the executive. For the nice people who are Liberal Democrats who also think that this actually should be reconsidered, that gives you an opportunity to save face so they don't have to vote against their own party and try and put down the substantive motion. It's much better for everyone if you just take it away so that the nice sensible votes can give you a nice little message, please let's look at this, rather than this becoming a massive scandal that costs you in the elections. You've got a choice, please vote for this motion. Thank you.
So we're now going to vote on the amendment. When lights show, please vote.
Please can we have a recorded vote? Thank you.
Do you have the requisite number? Yep, we will have a recorded vote on the amendment. Please, could those who are in favour of a recorded vote on the amendment, please raise your hands again.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Beeman.
For.
Councillor Busby.
Against.
Councillor Crowe.
Against.
Councillor Davidson. Councillor Denis. Councillor Deuce.
Against.
Councillor Earwaker.
For.
Councillor Fairclough.
Against.
Councillor Follows.
Against.
Councillor Gale. For. Councillor Goodridge.
For.
Councillor Hess. For. Councillor Hyman.
For.
Councillor Keel.
Against.
Councillor Lawton.
For.
Councillor Long.
Against.
Councillor MacLeod.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Merriweather. Councillor Murraylees.
Against.
Councillor Morrison.
Against.
Councillor Monroe.
Against.
Councillor Murray.
For.
Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Ken Reid.
For.
Councillor Ruth Reid. For. Councillor Paul Rivers.
Against.
Councillor Penny Rivers.
Against.
Councillor Spence.
Against.
Councillor Steiger. Councillor Liz Townsend.
Against.
Councillor Philip Townsend.
Against.
Councillor Ward.
For.
Councillor Weldon.
Against.
Councillor Wicks. Councillor Williams.
Against.
That is lost. 17 in favour of the amendment and 20 against. So we come to the recommendation, back to the recommendation, and we have Councillor Merriweather, would you like to unreserve your right to speak?
I'm sure he would.
On reserve. Well, look, listen, there's, there's no question that this isn't an easy project. And it's very challenging for us. And, I respect the genuinely held views of those who've expressed them very eloquently. And it's not an easy project for our officers either, who've built hundreds of council homes and that we should be proud of, and operate nearly 5,000 in the estate. But the original, let's just go back. The original purchase price for the site was valued under Red Book methodology at full 100% open market value, reflecting the original planning consent that it came with, but at 100% full open market value rental income, and of course build out costs that we were estimating back in 2022 before the eye-watering inflation that we've seen ever since. That original cost was notionally apportioned between the commercial and the residential elements by our qualified independent expert advisors, not us, based on the respective square footage. Our decision on the change of use to 70% affordable changed that Red Book basis of valuation and the consequent impact on the value of that land and the forecast value of the finished affordable housing development. From that point, we have been in a slightly parallel world where all of our costs are still at 100% full market value, but our income and benefits consequently valued at only 70% of the full open market value. And for the avoidance of doubt, exactly the same principles apply to any finished home bought retail from a developer outside of a Section 106 contract. A change of use by us to affordable or social rent would trigger a discount in value reflecting that change. And of course, this project is not an either this or somewhere else choice. And even if it were, the research of our own qualified independent expert advisors tells us that there are currently insufficient available apartments on the open market in the Waverley Borough Council area, not just Godalming, that match the quality, design and space requirements of the proposed development. The main report is clear that an exit now risks crystallising an avoidable capital loss, which the development would in time recover. Right. In purely financial terms, the affordable rent valuation principles have impacted the NPV. That's one number that's been quoted here. And that's because the cost streams, including the 15% build cost contingency, are valued at 100% market pricing. And the £7.5 million being allocated includes the land that we've already bought and currently sits in the general fund. But the financial benefit streams, the rental incomes, are only valued at 70% of full open market value because of the 30% affordable discount. These net streams then discount at a very high hurdle rate. I can go on about the Green Book, but in the time that I've got allowed, I just want to stress, this is not a project being done at any price. Apart from the Homes England subsidy, which very few people have mentioned, there is no public or taxpayer subsidy, no tenant subsidy. Appendix 2 speaks for itself. This project is self-financing and positive. It actually pays back into the HRA to the tune of millions of pounds. So I commend the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So just to follow on from Councillor Merriweather's summation there, thank you all very much for the comments and questions. It's obviously been extremely interesting hearing them all, and I know that they're all coming from deeply held beliefs. I do, however, believe that as a council, we have the opportunity and indeed, more importantly, I think, the actual obligation to provide affordable homes to those who need them. I know it's only 13 homes, but it's a start. It's 13 homes for 13 people or 13 couples or whatever, multiples, that wouldn't have them otherwise. And we need to start thinking in this way. The idea of actually just selling this now and having the whole plot languishing until somebody deigns to come along and possibly do something in the way that Councillor Townsend has described, which we all know will be nothing like the standard to which we would be building, is frankly, I think, awful to contemplate. And I don't think we should enable that to happen. I think the social outcomes ultimately justify and indeed outweigh some of the objections about this. I really, really do. And I commend the option 2 that I started with, and I would like to have a recorded vote, please.
Do you have the requisite numbers of supporters? Yeah. So we'll have another recorded vote.
Councillor Austin.
Against.
Councillor Beeman.
Against.
Councillor Busby.
For.
Councillor Crowe.
For.
Councillor Davidson.
Again.
Councillor Denis. Councillor Deuce.
For.
Councillor Earwaker.
Against.
Councillor Fairclough.
For.
Councillor Follows.
For.
Councillor Gale.
Against.
Councillor Goodridge.
Against.
Councillor Hess.
Against.
Councillor Hyman.
Against.
Councillor Keel.
For.
Councillor Lawton.
Against.
Councillor Long.
For.
Councillor MacLeod.
Against.
Councillor Martin.
Against.
Councillor Merriweather.
For.
Councillor Mirrlees.
For.
Councillor Morrison.
For.
Councillor Monroe.
Against.
Councillor Murray.
I'm against. Sorry.
Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Ken Reid.
Against.
Councillor Ruth Reid.
Against.
Councillor Paul Rivers.
For.
Councillor Penny Rivers.
For.
Councillor Spence.
For.
Councillor Steiger.
For.
Councillor Liz Townsend.
For.
Councillor Philip Townsend.
For.
Councillor Ward.
Against.
Councillor Weldon.
For.
Councillor Wicks. And Councillor Williams.
For.
The vote is carried. 19 in favour and 18 against, no abstentions. So we come to the end of our evening and it's been a very long one. But before we go, I'm just going to impart some sad news that Bishop Andrew died tonight, and may he rest in peace and rise in glory. Thank you all.